What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and I'm here with Johnny and Silver for the Best Gaming Podcast 504 to talk about, well, a bunch of stuff. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Civilization 7, GTA, Switch 2. Let's see, what else? Dynasty Warriors, business as a whole. Probably
Monster Hunter Wilds.
Show off more hardware, Monster Hunter Wilds. All kinds of stuff. It's actually been one hell of a busy week, surprisingly enough. It's been sort of nice. We'll even talk about why was it that Karak posted this weird video of him riding a horse. I had multiple people going like, what in the hell is this video? Like, that is me riding a horse, gentlemen. That is all it is. There's nothing special. I had people looking for a hidden meaning. There were people who were like, oh, man, there must be some hidden meaning in this message. It's like, no, sorry, buddy. No hidden meaning at all. Hopefully we won't have any tech issues here. We switched over to Discord for this one instead of Zoom just to test out various different recording programs as we start out 2025. We started a little late, February. First of all, though, let's discuss what Silver's been playing because he was gone last week, didn't get to stop by. So what is it that you've been playing this last like 2 weeks, I guess, since the last podcast?
Well, really, it's mostly just been Dynasty Warriors Origins. It's been absorbing all my time. I'm like 100 hours into it now, into wrapping up like 100% on it.
Damn.
So yeah, that's pretty much been it. And then since early this week, Kingdom Come 2, the last couple of days.
Gotcha. You just since it came out, did you basically switch over? Or did you give it a day or two? Gotcha.
No, basically the day it came out, I switched over.
With Dynasty Warriors 100 hours into it, like, how much of that was, like, if you look at it, how much of that is experiencing new stuff versus going and grinding for something? I know that they've changed out how some of it works. So is the grinding still there, or is it less of a grind?
There's definitely grind.
There's definitely.
But what's really great about it is that the combat remains so much fun throughout that it doesn't really feel that arduous. The only thing, there was one point in my first, like as Dynasty Warriors campaigns do, it branches off into 3 different options for each of the 3 different kingdoms.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do 3 different playthroughs. And on my first playthrough, it did start to get feel a little grindy because I really started focusing on the like NPCs will give you these grinding quests that are basically go kill with 200 enemies using this battle art or this battle technique or this weapon or whatever it is. And I really sort of got focused on doing that rather than just doing it naturally as I played the game. And that really started to hurt my enjoyment. But that was sort of an initial bump. And once I got over that and finished the first playthrough and got into the end game, the game really, really elevated at that point.
Johnny, you're not a fan of those kind of games, right? You're not going to be playing it anytime soon.
No, I never got into those.
I feel like with those games, well, we'll talk a little bit about it, that they change each time, which is sort of cool. Like there's always some little change. I actually like some of the ideas that I'd heard changing in this one. I just haven't got a chance.
Certainly the last couple. I mean, not 9 was a significant change as well, but that didn't work that well. But this one really, because they really have boiled down a lot of the essentials of what have made up a lot of the different games, like from the Warriors series to the Dynasty Warriors Empires series.
Mm-hmm.
As well, there are elements from that in this as well. In a way that really, really works. Like you have 10 different weapons, which is much, much less than you have in most of the Dynasty Warriors games. But every single one of these weapons feels entirely unique. Every one of them has a very, very distinctive moveset and ways that you can synergize them with their own unique battle arts and universal battle arts. And then combine those and then synergize those into combos that can get really, really effective. And finding those combinations and sort of from combining them and trying to compose sort of a combination that works is so rewarding and so much fun in this game.
What'd you play it on?
Also,
real quick,
I played it on PC.
Okay, continue.
The PC port, I haven't had any issues with it at all. Performance has been excellent. I've been very, very like I was a bit middling on the graphics initially in my impressions, but I have to say when you get to some of the larger battles, the scale in the set piece is really jaw dropping. Like the Battle of Guandu in particular is a complete triumph, I think, in the game. Like when it's there are like the ultimate battle that you unlock when you have all three campaigns beaten and you achieve peace in like all the regions throughout China. You unlock an ultimate battle that basically pits you against like 5,000 or 6,000 troops and just this massive brawl. It's just complete nuts. Like it's the craziest Dynasty Warriors experience I've ever had. Like the combat feels a lot more action gamey. It feels much more similar to like a FromSoft game, or to a game like Sekiro or Neo, than it did to old Dynasty Warriors. But it still has that element of you against thousands of troops and having to maintain constant awareness of your positioning, because you're not only fighting the officer in front of you, you're potentially fighting three officers who are also around you and might jump in and attack you, especially on the harder difficulties. You will, if you're not careful, you will get ambushed from directions you never even expected, and from all the little individual troops as well. Like, and the way it synergizes as well with the various tactics you get that you can then use for your own troops, and then combine it to the battle art system. It all just works exceptionally well and feels so fun and engaging that I couldn't really put the game down in my time with it. Like the only real low point I had with it was really like, even like the story I also greatly enjoyed, actually, for the most part. Everything, the weak part of the story is everything that involves the main character, unfortunately. Like your main character story, where you're an amnesiac trying to recover your memory, and the bonds you form with other NPC characters and whatnot. That's all largely rubbish, I'm sad to say. But the historical stuff, where the historical characters interact with each other and where context is provided for the different battles, that's all solid. And it's the most grounded Dynasty Warriors game I've ever played. There are no outrageous outfits here. And like characters that used to be like cartoon characters, like Zheng Zhao, the leader of the Yellow Turban Rebellion, is like used to be this crazy mage, and now he's this jaded revolutionary. And like Deng Zhuo, who used to be this fat megalomaniac, is basically this huge, brawny, might makes right kind of guy now. It's a really fascinating twist on these sort of traditional archetypes that they've played on. Yeah, I think it helps the story a lot. It makes the story a lot more, like the delivery of the story a lot more poignant. And especially in the context of then delivering those battles and the meaning and significance of those battles, and actually imbuing those battles with significance because of it.
What have you been playing, Johnny? Anything?
Yeah, I've been playing Monster Hunter Wilds today. So the open beta is out. We'll talk about that. I've been playing some more Wukong. I came back to it. I'm in the final chapter, getting my ass kicked, but it's been fun. And that's pretty much it. I've dabbled a bit in Sniper, the new Sniper Resistance game too. That's about it, really. Some League.
Same old, other than and no Kingdom Come yet, right? You had said you're just not sold, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think it's like the right time for me. It's a very big commitment, and I'm not at that energy level right now.
Sometimes you just want it tangential. You just want a shallow relationship with the game.
You know? Yeah, I just want to go in and whack people with my monkey staff right now, you know.
Yeah.
You could also just go in and whack Horseshoe with a blacksmithing hammer in that game.
Yeah, I hope that, dude, the Horseshoe in particular, it's weird you mention that, because that one is the Dark Souls of crafting in that game. I was, fucking trying to hammer it.
Really?
I don't know what it is, Silver. And it's funny. I just was like, it must have been me. And then I go in and Jay Reaper's in our Discord and he's like, the fucking horseshoe is like the collision detection is weird. You're trying to get it perfect,
Right.
you know. And then it's gamified. Once you've sort of figure out
Yeah,
where
yeah,
you
yeah.
generally have to hit, you're fine. But I was trying to be all. I mean, I think I was trying to make a fucking horseshoe, and about an hour in, I was like, God damn, man, this is rough. Like it took me twice as long as it probably should have.
Right.
But thank you, Gamesley, for the super chat. Super chats always help the channel. As you guys know, no trips, no sponsorships, at least for now, until I can find one for like delicious chocolates filled with Mountain Dew or something. Well, no, that'd be gross. But nothing right now, so all of those help. $2. He says, keep crushing it. Thank you very much, sir. We will continue to try to crush it at some point. I have been playing Kingdom Come Deliverance. We can talk about doing a we can talk about it, right? Fuck. I have
Yeah, we
five
should be
I
able
have
to.
5 games to review, and there's oh man, I'm looking at this and I forgot. I distinctly
Good
wanted
luck tracking the NDAs and everything.
Yeah. I'm playing the games you guys would expect. I'll just say that. No game that you guys are
Okay.
expecting I didn't get. In fact, there's a ton. I was showing my schedule in the Discord today because it is nuts. It's going to be a great time. To me, that's just super exciting. It's going to be awesome. I can't
And
wait.
your new horse riding channel, right? You're gonna
Yeah,
spin
right.
off into a full
Going to be
just
all horse riding. Listen,
Yeah.
that one of the I even got some patron messages. I had somebody was saying like I never thought in a million years like I would fall asleep to a horse riding video from Karak, but here you
I
go.
told you, dude, it is good for that. Yep.
It is, and the thing is those are done for. Well, for me, people always ask like. In a review, you're chopping it up, and the only way to get people to watch for long periods of times is to chop it up. You have different types of editing. You have your like MTV editing. Your review editing has to be somewhere in the middle, and I want to sometimes show a longer section. So I contacted them and was like, I'd like to show this on the review embargo. They were like, that's closer to a walkthrough or something, where something may happen, so you have to wait till it goes live, which actually helped. I did the review the day prior and then did this. Yeah, it's just riding around, and I do plan to do more. I'm not stopping the walking the walks, but these are nice because it's not me blathering. So if somebody just wants to sit back and hear the audio, and especially if I like the game, I think it's even, as in the audio, I think it's even more like enjoyable to just sometimes say, I like the audio, here's some snippets in the review, but if you want to hear the audio as it is without me talking for a prolonged period of time.
Segment.
Yeah, and I had seen that these were doing good for Cyberpunk. I saw, and I've been watching them. I've been watching people drive around in Cyberpunk. I'm not going to play that game again, but I certainly have no issue with somebody riding around for 5 hours on a motorbike, which God bless them, because they must have pissed into a bucket while they were driving, because I didn't see any cuts. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to do that. But yeah, it was fun to do. Kingdom Come, I'm glad to see it do that well. I think, despite my issues with it, and I did have some that were particularly troublesome with that game.
I've had some as well.
Have you? That I was just like, and that's why, I'm sure bugs and some save game oddity timing for me was pretty notorious.
I've had some quest triggers that did trigger properly.
Oh, gotcha.
A bunch of times.
I did have a lady one time where I went in to do something and she never showed up. So I was like, okay, timing. I must be wrong on my timing. And then found her in her room. So I kept resting, and I rested for like 7 days. Just rested, waited. And she just never came out. The only way to trigger the quest was to steal something in front of her.
I had an NPC I was supposed to talk to, but she wouldn't stop crying, and I couldn't interact with her at all.
Dude, that's every Sunday for me. I'm just joking. No, that's crazy. I haven't heard of that one. That's the crying game. You should have clipped that and got the crying game music.
Because of events that had happened in the quest, she did have reason to cry.
Oh.
But like the quest didn't update or anything, and it still just said for me to interact with her, and there was no option to at all.
Yeah. And playing that,
and I had to rejigger a whole bunch of stuff and retry a whole bunch of stuff before it finally worked.
Before it finally clipped. That was mostly what I was playing, just enjoying sitting back and seeing some of the stuff that goes on there. It's a great game. My thumbnail that we use for this podcast is complete bullshit. where like I've heard people saying, "Oh my God, like this shows that every other game needs to do this," that kind of stuff. So I made the fake thumbnail about the industry versus Kingdom Come, and Kingdom Come's coming to slit its throat. It's not at all true. In fact, it's so weird because you always see people saying, "Oh my God, this game proves this is the thing. This game proves this." It doesn't prove anything. Do you know what it proves? Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is enjoyed and liked by a particular number of people. That is it.
Yeah.
And if we keep I mean, yeah, I get it. It's like journalists or YouTubers, myself, whatever. It's clickbait stuff. But to me, I don't want all this kind of gameplay in some of my other games. I chose
No.
Kingdom Come for a very particular reason. And to play it, I get a very particular enjoyment. I don't want that shit in every game. Dude, I'd never play another game.
Same with Red Dead. Right.
Same with Red Dead. Yeah, Red Dead. Yeah. Dude, yeah, there's some games where I'm like, listen, I don't need to spend 5 hours skinning this fucking deer. Give me the hide, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, very enjoyable game. I liked the quests. I liked the audio for the most part. There's some odd vocal things that go on in it. Nothing terrible or anything. I thought the writing was generally good.
The writing I've really appreciated so far as well. Did you get as annoyed with the animal health as I have been?
Yeah. So we're talking about the fact that those fuckers are Sherman tanks.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking? Yeah. Okay. So I thought it was
standing like in front of a wolf that's growling at me, and I'm putting like 5 arrows right into its forehead.
Dude.
Like, boom. And it's still it does nothing but growl at me as it's standing there, taking the arrows right into its forehead.
Okay.
Before time heals
I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody, but have you got to the quest that involves helping somebody from some wolves yet?
Yeah.
Dude, I must have snuck up on that thing early, because those wolves, there was only like maybe 4, and holy balls, it was hours of just going like, what in the am I supposed to be doing? Like, how do you get these fuckers off of you? And they have the timing for their jump. And, I heard some people saying
you have
some
to counter
shit.
them.
Yeah, I heard some people saying some shit like multiple enemies don't attack you at the same time. Listen, I've got footage in the video. That's not true. They do.
Yeah.
They will attack you at the same time, including fucking wolves. And so you're being attacked by one wolf. He's grabbing your leg, and the moment you get him off, or if you parry one, you do your little put. I think when you parry a wolf, what do? You like push him to the side.
Yeah, you do. You kind of knock him down.
Here's the big problem. I had a short sword. When you push him away, you're out of range. And by the time you get to him, they've reset.
Not only that, but there are significant collision detection issues. I don't know if it's just that sword, but I've had the animal be like right at my knees and look down and see the sword like slash in and not connect with anything.
Not connect with them. Okay. Well, that's good to know that you had those as well. Did they kill my enjoyment? No, they just made me go like, oh god.
I think it's a question of there being like iframes or something for the animal locked in an animation or something.
Absolutely, there has to be because the parrying the wolves and watching them reset, when I would feel like I was close enough and I would swing, if they were in a very particular move set, it just would go right through them. So yeah, okay. Well, that's good to know. So yeah, so playing that, performance wise, it's been. There were some issues on the consoles. Performance is a little jaggy on the consoles at times, but it is nice to overall just see it and just sort of look at it and go, okay, they took the original engine, added some bells and whistles, and overall we're still getting a more performant game now than we would if they had switched engines, didn't come to grips with it. There's stuff that you see in this game, texture. In particular, there's some places where you're like, damn, this is rough. Some village areas you go to, some people. I saw some people that were certainly 5th, 6th world people. Like, you'd see you'd see like the main primary NPC, and then you'd see a store owner, and they were looking pretty good. And then you'd go past somebody who was like knitting or whatever, which I love all their little things people do.
Yeah.
Pick up wood, and they're chopping wood. And this one lady was sewing, and she looked up at me, and I was like, that's haunting. She looks like she's from another game. But that was all fun, man. Cool quest. The writing, like you said, I thought was really good for the most part. Can't get into much more, of like what I didn't like because it has to do with the story. I would just say the warning I would have for people is I personally felt in the middle it gets slow, which we're talking many hours in. I noticed, I guess, a feeling of being forced to do stuff really quick and then having those periods where they're like, okay, tomorrow's when we're going to do this thing. And you're sitting there looking at the time and everybody's closed and your timing can't be right. As in, if you go to sleep, you'll wake up and they want you there right away. And if you don't go to sleep, you're in the middle of a town that requires a torch to be out and pretty much everything you do is illegal. Or, well, everything
Like
you might want
shops
to do
closed,
would be, yeah, shops
everything.
are closed. Yeah. Yeah. And people be like, just leave me alone. You go into their house and you'd be like, knock, knock, knock. You go in, you're like looking at them, you're like, knock, knock, knock. And they're like, dude, what are you doing in my house? Leave me alone. You're like, all right, I get it. I get it. You probably don't want to sell a sword at 3 a.m. They're not a pawn shop owner from like, the John Wick movies. They're not ready to take a new,
Right.
a little bit of money and a new person at any time. I think Johnny's right though. It doesn't do much for newcomers. It cleans up combat a little bit.
That is, I think, for sure one of its weakest elements. It's not even like gameplay wise, but especially story wise.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, it's got a bit of a
you're
last time.
You're gonna be in trouble if you haven't really played the first game. I
Right.
think with being able to tell who are these people, like.
Yeah.
Why should I care?
And what are these
Or-
events? Like, I think what they really should have done, what would have helped a lot, is if they have put Henry as a character in the codex and like described events from the first game there, so that you had new players had one reference point they could go to.
That's
in order to learn. Oh, this is what happened.
Yeah.
But instead, you have to go to like different parts of the codex. So you have to go to like Skalitz, the entry point on Skalitz to learn what happened to Skalitz. You have to go to other points to learn what happened there and stuff. And it gets very, very scattered.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're gonna miss a lot of stuff, I think, when you're a new player.
Just context, right? Like of everything.
Yes, absolutely.
As I was telling one of the guys in the Discord, it is context, but it's also, and context is connected to this, but it is caring, because this isn't a fantasy world where you're like, okay, there's a dragon, there's something to fight. Instead, it's an interpersonal thing between two friends and two nations. And you're like, all right. And the nations are names you probably don't know unless you're a historian. So you're like, what the fuck? Why do I care about any of this? And then they do a, sort of a, here's what happened. But that's not, it's not the same. It's just the way the game goes. There's not much they can do. What I did like, what I loved, what I wish there was more of, but even the little bit there was tantalizing, was the first part where you're telling stories with the people in the camp. And depending on what you choose, it's like Ultima, where they'd be like, hey, if a person runs by you and he's stolen something and you catch him, but he's going to be killed, do you hide the stuff and let the kid go? Do you, and that sort of generates your character.
They did the same thing a little bit in the first game, just much, much smaller. You only had like 2 choices there when you're talking to your mother at the very start, and you have to describe what you did in the a drunken night at the tavern the other night. That's when you get to start to like determine your 2 main starting stats. That way, I think, in the first game. But it is expanded a bit in the second one.
And that's what I liked about this one, Silver, is that it's not only are you telling them, like they say, how did you do it? And you pick, I used my dog, or I was smart, or I talked, but they're telling stories about each other, which helped a tiny bit reminding me of who they were. Like, because that had been a while. And so I was like, okay, that guy's this guy. Okay. All right. So and you sort of get an idea of the team, at least a small idea. I wish it was done more. I love that discussion. There was a camaraderie there that is rare, that by the time that discussion was over, like I was like, okay, I dig all these guys. Like I sort of understand where all these guys are, or who they are to Henry generally, or at least who I think they are to me. And then shit hits the fan, and doesn't matter I mean, it does matter, but it's like crap hits the fan and you're sort of spread to the 4 winds. I will also say Mutt's my favorite animal character, I think, in a game ever. I don't know what appealed to me with this guy, whether it was the new model, whether it was the multiple skills you can get that let you use him, But man, there is a quest to
How
get
people
him.
react to him.
Yes, and there is a quest to get him that I will not spoil, but it is not one stage. It is many stages, and I felt this keen desire to find him. And they kept pulling you along, and after a while I was like, "Oh my god, is he going to die? Like, I got to find this guy." And I was just scraping the land for clues to how to get that dog, and by the time I got him, I was like, that quest line, even though it drags a little bit, or maybe even plays with your emotions in a pretty shallow way, I was like, dude,
made you care about it.
When I got Mutt, I was like, I think there's a ability to send him home, which probably would go to one of your, or maybe just go away, you call him back, and I'm like, I'm never sending him home. I spent 3 hours getting this little bastard. Like, he's never leaving my side. Go ahead.
That quest did end up annoying me because it felt like you were doing the same thing over and over, running into wolves over and over and over again.
That's what I was saying.
Like,
yeah, I did feel like
that was what started to like feel a little tedious.
I'm seeing a pattern that the wolves are the most annoying thing. Like,
hey man, the wolves are
that pops up.
They're a thing in this game.
They're outside of the missions or the quests where you're forced to confront them. They're very easy to avoid.
Okay,
yeah, that's
good.
true.
So it's not like a Ubisoft, Far Cry.
No. You can avoid them and sneak around them very, very easily. Same thing with the wild dogs.
Yeah.
You don't have to fight them.
You don't have to fight them. It's just that
that's good.
Well, they give you stuff like everything. It's typical resource grab, but it's also the fact that they're wolves, and I want to kill them because I'm always nervous that they're going to kill my dog. Even though, well, they will try to screw up your dog, but I just get nervous about it, and I'm like, I got to take these guys out. It's like watching Powder Cake says it's like watching the Twin Towers first. That is true. Finished Eternal Strands and Citizen Sleeper 2. Now waiting for Avowed. A bunch of people are playing Citizen Sleeper 2, which is awesome. Wizard Smoke says that horse riding video took me back to the first time you get to ride the horse in Zelda Ocarina of Time, and I think I rode it around for 2 hours.
Yeah, good old Epona.
Yep. Or Shadow of the Colossus, any of those games where you get
good
to
old
interact
Agro.
in that way.
I will always remember Aguro from Shadow of the Colossus.
Is that its name?
Agro.
Did we go black? We did. Sorry, guys. If you can still hear me, I apologize. Are we back? We did. We went black for a second. We're trying this Discord thing out.
Yeah, we're good now.
We're good now? We're good now.
Yep.
Hey, look at that. We popped out for a second. That's because I was crying over the dog. Anyway, I would just say it's quite enjoyable. It's a good game overall. I did hear somebody in here saying the PS5 was stuttering. Did you guys see that? Somebody was saying that there were some audio issues with the PS5, so that sort of sucks. Hopefully
I've
they can
heard
fix it.
About performance issues on the Xbox with frame rate.
I did too. Yeah, I did too.
But don't know anything outside of that.
Yeah, that's too bad.
I've also had some feedback issues with the crafting sometimes, where Henry will give you the wrong information, especially with alchemy. Where, like, when I was trying to make potions, he kept saying that I wasn't boiling long enough, which really mystified me. But then I found out that it wasn't the length of time I was boiling that was wrong. It was because I shouldn't fan the flames to make it boil. Okay. I should just lower the pot and then boil it. And I should only fan it if the recipe specifically said to fan it.
Said to do it. Okay.
But that wasn't what Henry said was going wrong. He kept saying, I'm not boiling it long enough, which made me feel like, I need to put more fire on it. I need to
right.
I need to boil it more.
Can I also say, I don't know about you, Silver, but the journal. Okay, listen, journals aren't good normally in games, so I do not hinge on them. I have my own notes. But the best part about this journal that cracks me up is it is as if Henry has the world's worst case of CTE. Because you will get this journal with multiple steps, and as he fills in the different steps, instead of informing you, it will inject new data up above sometimes, or in weird places. And so if you're accustomed to going to the bottom of a journal for a main quest and seeing what you need to do, this game's like, there's some stuff up here now. And so you're like, wait, what? Okay, what? Where am I looking here? And the journal itself and the HUD was just, there's a lot there. There's a lot of data. A lot of data.
Did you find that the inventory had gotten worse?
Yeah.
Like the inventory management? I did too.
Well,
that had gotten
Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I felt like the UI itself, like the menu system, has gotten significantly more cumbersome just because there are a lot more tabs and stuff to sort through. Now
it's a
it takes
3-ring
a whole lot
binder,
longer.
Silver. When you
Yeah.
open it up and you're like, okay, I want to pick an item, and they're like, well, you have to hit another button to get the item drag out to go.
Yeah,
And you're like,
and the new pouch system, I wasn't crazy about either.
oh yeah, right. The pouches.
Yeah.
It took me a while to figure out how to even work a pouch, because I would grab something and be like, put in pouch, and you put in pouch, and it just highlighted a spot, and I'd try to click the spot,
Right.
and I'd be like, it's not fucking going in the spot. Like, what am I doing wrong? And you constantly feel time pressured in that game. You always feel like everybody's watching you, or somebody's getting ready to jump you at any time in it. Yeah, little idiosyncrasies there. Hey, it's an immersive sim. I mean,
Yeah.
they're
I'm
going,
missing
Friday.
missing hardcore mode though. I'm sad they removed that.
did they
But
remove
apparently
it?
they're it's not there at launch. Apparently they're gonna implement it later on. But that's gonna be for potentially a different playthrough. I don't know if I'll ever get around to, but
Yeah. Johnny, none of this selling you on it, I'm sure. But what would sell you on it?
I think it's hard because I didn't finish the first game either. So I did watch some recaps and stuff, but it doesn't give me the same feeling that I know the context of what's going on. So I played maybe half of the first game. So it sets the scene a little bit, but I still feel like I would be pretty lost. And that would also make it pretty hard for me to be engaged in the missions, when like something important's
Right.
going on and they're talking about some big battle or some big strategy thing that's coming up. I just don't think I would care that much. And that would be important for me in a sim like this. I need to sort of feel like I
Bought in.
understand the stakes, who are the players a bit better. And then outside of that, just the length of the game, because I recently played Metaphor and that was, like 90 hours.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm a bit reluctant to jump into another one of those.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
for now, honestly, I'm having a great time with some more casual in terms of time games. So like, Wukong, I can jump in, I can play for an hour or two, have a good
Sure.
time. That's sort of where I'm at right now, more focused on gameplay and not really looking for a big journey in a game.
Man, that's fair. Yeah. And that's what this is. I mean, it's simulate, it's
Did you guys
everything
find
is,
the
is
side
crunchy.
quests were like, was there a lot of side quests that you guys
Yeah.
did or no?
Go
Yes.
ahead, Silver.
Yeah, there's been a bunch and they've been really good, I think, so far. I think they do a really good job of adapting, of giving you options for how to handle them in various ways, and then sort of implementing a response to those choices and potential consequences. I think that works pretty well. A lot of them are genuinely interesting. I think characterization is so far one of the strong points of the game's writing. And it's quite reminiscent of The Witcher 3 in that respect, I think,
Mhm.
especially also with the sort of almost, I mean, it's not Slavic, but it is that sort of Eastern, some of it is that Eastern vibe. You have Roma people, for instance, here.
Yeah.
Represented, I think, in a really excellent way. And that whole aspect, I think, works really, really well. So the side quests have been a strong point of the game for sure so far.
I was going to say in the first game, the side quests were some of the things I remember the most. Some were super fun with, fun side characters.
Yeah, and you'll find that
super
you'll find that
impactful,
here as
just
well.
like fun characters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll definitely find that in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, talk too much about it because I've beat it. So it's like the stuff that stuff I would talk about would be later. But overall, it definitely feels like one. I would say that I personally didn't find that there was a mission, and I was sort of warning people prior to even playing it that there might not be a mission that equaled the big monk drunk mission of 1. I didn't feel that there was a mission here. I felt that there were activities you could do that could lead to stories that were more interactive and engaging from the guy there. So I was like, okay, they sort of switched it more onto the player. to tell their own story in a lot of this. You still definitely get these the bigger set piece ones that are more of the cutscene, the funny parts.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
But there's definitely something that I do like that I really can't talk about that pops up in the game. I'll just say this: I think the crime system is good. I think the crime system is really good. I think that the way it portrays crime, the way it delivers the information about crime, and the penalties for doing things, all that kind of stuff, very good.
That
Solid
I
crime
can't speak
system.
to as much because my Henry is a goody two shoes.
Well, okay, mine didn't start out bad.
Buys all his equipment, and yeah. I spent like the first 3 in-game days just like working the forge at the blacksmith just to earn money for to get food and drink and whatnot, and save up a little bit of money.
Right. What did you think about the skill systems and the skills and how they work? Did you like the skills? Do you not like the skills?
I mean, they pretty much work the same way as they did in the first game. I like it for the most part. I think. I mean, some of it is weird. Like I'm mystified that you don't gain strength by working the forge at the blacksmith. You don't get strength XP from that. But then you get the perk that gives you strength XP for picking herbs. So you basically become Hercules by pulling weeds out of the ground.
Yep.
That's pretty funny. Like in the first game, but so the fact that they chose to retain that is a little odd. But I think this is a game. I feel that it needs to be emphasized where don't game the system. Don't game the systems, and you're gonna enjoy it a whole lot more because it's very, very easy to break the systems in this game. It's very, very easy to make money if that's what you really, really want to do. It's very, very easy to get like armor, weapons, whatever, the top tier weapons right out of the gate if that's what you really want to do. But I think you cheat yourself out of what is really the main draw that they build in terms of immersion and experience in the game when you do that. That's not to sort of not validate people's experience if that's how they want to play it. Fine. But however you have fun. But I think for the most part, you'll have more fun with the game by allowing the systems to be played or engaged with in the way in which they're kind of intended to be engaged with.
Yeah.
So don't run around picking up like 300 nettles so that you can sell them for 30 grotions every couple of minutes or whatever, just to bank 1,000 grotions in like an hour. And break the game out of the gate. Allow yourself the time to sort of engage with it and enjoy it, and I think it'll reward you in kind.
When it comes down to it, I would say the reason why I was saying I like the crime system is it does some stuff that I thought was pretty cool, like basically building up towards larger and larger crimes, how it treats larger crimes. The only thing I didn't like is if you're inside of an enemy area, you've been sneaking. I call them enemies, but if you're inside of an area and you're sneaking or you're thieving and they catch you, you can sometimes talk your way out of it. If you try to talk your way out of it and you succeed, though, they reset instantly.
Yeah.
So if you walk 1 foot, they warn you again. And you're like, no. You told me to leave, and I'm trying to leave. I need to leave. And then they give you a couple warnings. So if I did get caught or whatever, I would pay them or I would try to talk my way out of it, which talking your way out of it's hilarious. I think that I thought that was awesome. I would just sprint out as fast as possible. And they're yelling at you the entire time. They're constantly like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I was just like, shh, and I just busted my way out of there. And that seemed to work overall. But yeah, it was definitely rough. There's some stuff with stealth. What else do we got for Kingdom Come? Let's see. Horseback riding worked well. All the horse stuff worked well. All the animal stuff, I think there was no issues with any of those. I actually really enjoyed that. Thievery, what about lockpicking?
I haven't done much lockpicking, given my Henry is a goody two-shoes, but it feels like I did pick like 2 or 3 locks, and it felt easier than in the first game.
Oh, it felt easier to you?
Yeah, but then, I mean, the locks, they were easy locks, so
Damn. Okay.
literally. So
I felt that mechanically it was slightly smoother, but for the most part, I still had issues. I was still running into problems no matter what.
yeah, I mean, it's still largely the same system.
It felt like it, yeah. Speaking of the same system or the same game, but I personally feel like probably one of the best, I guess I would say, adjustments to a title and then a series move is Monster Hunter. It looks like it, at least, Monster Hunter Wilds. And Johnny got to play the beta. So, best game ever? Okay. Terrible?
I think it's it's early to say, right? I only played like 2-3 hours, but I really think it's the best Monster Hunter World game, or sorry, Monster Hunter game,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like Monster Hunter World. There was something about Rise that felt pretty different, even though it was very, very similar, obviously, but there was something about playing it that felt very different, very portable, is the best way I can describe it. And this one feels full fat, and it's got everything that I liked from the first one, but it's got better audio. I found that weapons hitting sounded better, picking up stuff sounded better,
Gotcha.
more interesting. So a lot of added stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then a lot of gameplay improvements. For example, you can actually aim where you're gonna hit. So let me explain. In World, let's
Right.
say you're charging a big ass greatsword attack, right? And the monster moves away from where it was, and now you're gonna hit thin air,
Mhm.
right? But you can't really change it. There was one way to change direction, but it involved the slingshot, and it was pretty cumbersome. And now you have the ability to just press a button, you hold LT, and you can actually aim. You have a reticle
Mhm.
where you can aim exactly where you want to hit, and it also highlights specific parts. So if the monster has a breakable arm or something, and you hover over it with it, you'll be able to focus on that when you hit. And there's new things like once you do break a part, you can then get an exploit on it, like a bigger attack that usually knocks them down.
Mhm.
So that's much more accessible, right? Because one of the big learning curves with the bigger weapons was that, well, monsters are always moving, right? So all of a sudden, if you have to charge a 3-second attack, you either knock them down to be able to do it, or you need to very precisely predict their movements and everything. So with this, at least you can adapt and change where you're gonna hit. That's one big,
What's that
big
called
difference.
in the game? Focus
Focus mode.
Focus mode. Okay, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So focus mode is super cool. And then switching weapons is awesome, man. So you can have your two weapons and you just go to your mount and you're able to switch between them. It's quick, seamless, works great.
Mhm.
I was trying greatsword and hammer, and switching between those was awesome. I really see a lot of potential there because there are some monsters that are really hard to exploit with a certain type of weapon, maybe a slower weapon.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're carrying something faster, like daggers or maybe a ranged weapon, then you can get out of a tough situation. Or maybe a monster has a phase where they're just moving a lot and they become much harder to hit. You then can fall back on your secondary, for example. So that also adds a ton.
How does the weapon switching happen? Is
So
it
you have to call your mount. You get on your mount and then you press D-pad right direction and you switch immediately. You just
so it's like
pull
you're
it out
getting the weapon off of your mount?
off your mount. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not in real time, nor is it while running around. You need to go to your horse or your
Yeah,
you
you
know
need
what
to
I
go
mean.
to your mount.
Okay.
The mount comes to you, right? So you
Mhm.
press a D-pad button, the mount comes to you. You mount automatically. Also, another change is that the mount actually moves towards the target automatically. You actually don't need to drive, so to speak. You can. So if you take over and you decide, hey, I actually want to go here, then you're in control. But if you stop controlling for a little bit, it goes back to autopilot and it's going towards the mark.
So that would stop you then from fighting an animal and going, this is the wrong weapon, and switching out right away. You have to basically say, oh, this is not the right weapon. Do you call your mount live while the combat's occurring?
Yeah, you call it right there. No matter where you're at, is always safe to call your mount.
Do you find that cumbersome that you have to call a mount just to switch, especially if you're fighting a big bad guy?
I think it's fine because part of the flow of the combat is sometimes you need to go back and sharpen your weapon or go back and craft something. And what's really cool is because the mount is moving automatically too, let's say that you're chasing after a monster. While you're doing that, you can switch. You can craft something. Maybe you need to craft a trap for the mission. You can do that while the
mount is taking awesome,
moving automatically. But then if you see a bunch of resources to pick up, you can immediately control it and go pick it up. So it works really well.
What's up, Lucitan? Yeah, I would say, I mean, I'm a big fan of the hammer, like I told you prior to when we were testing out the Discord thing. I really enjoyed its gameplay. I'm excited to jump in, but I would love to have 2 weapons. I think that's probably one of the biggest switches.
When you start the beta, there's like a cinematic, and you are using the greatsword. So the greatsword is technically the lore accurate weapon of choice.
The cutscene is not canon then.
Just saying,
I'm just saying.
I love seeing the greatsword featured. It is an awesome weapon.
Well, I mean, I may be like you. I might do those too. I don't know if I would overlap 2 big ones, but I just love the hammer as a solo player. I don't even know if it's a solo player weapon, but it definitely saved my life and saved my time because
I think
whatever
it
I was
might
using
be because
prior was
it also bonks people around you. If you remember, like when you hit, if someone's nearby, you will actually flinch them back.
Really well. And then the camp situation. So how do you set up a camp? Can you put the camp anywhere? Or are there spaces that you put the camp?
So in my experiencing, it seemed like you could put it anywhere. It might be that if you're too close to a monster, you can't do it. I didn't test that.
Right,
fully.
like you can't put it in its nest and shit. And
yeah, like right under its crotch.
Right.
Continue. But yeah, like most things in Monster Hunter, you talk to a cat, right? That's how it starts. And you talk to the cat. You can set up a camp somewhere.
Continue. If I'm missing, I'll be back in a second. Give me a second. Testing. Okay, there's me. We had a power bump. I realized something was happening. Give me 1 second. All right.
Let's see.
There we go. We're back.
Are we back with the audio?
No. I had a power bump, so my generator just turned on. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. I can. Yep. Okay. All good.
Yeah, it'll go live in a second.
I think we're good.
Yeah, my audio stuff just turned off. It's not on the generator, so when I saw the light go off, I was like, "Nah, I feel that's a power bump."
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Silver, I think because you were asking Silver if it's less about the exploration. I think it's more in a way.
More about the exploration?
I haven't really. Yeah, because the map is pretty big, man.
Yeah, I'm just wondering since you mentioned fast travel as such a huge plus.
Right. At the end of a hunt, the ability to you could do this, right? You could just go back to a camp, but the fact that you can place camps where it matters. So let's say that Yeah, very convenient.
Yeah.
So let's say that now you want to explore the north part, right? So you can set the camp sort of in the middle. Maybe you set out to do a hunt,
Sup,
and
Soul?
now you want to resume exploring north. So it's just really convenient, and it feels cool. It's one of those things that just feels nice.
I think
as well.
everything about it, I mean, I was telling you prior, I'm just really excited
Yeah.
for it. I think everything about it seems like what they've done is taken everything they've learned from the other games that you and I talked about, and they decided these are the things that in particular were causing people issues. And they seemed to have sort of fixed most of them. And the two weapons is the best part to me. Two weapons is awesome. Like the idea, I mean, yes, camping's cool, but two weapons, that's the shit right there. Because that
Yeah.
ability to not have to go back and just be able to do it while you're out at camp, that's exciting. That kind of stuff is great. And we'll just have to see how it comes together. But I like the idea of exploration. I have no issue with the automatic mount either. Just jumping on the back of the horse. I mean, how many even what do you call it? Kingdom Come has an auto follow the trail button. So
Yeah.
it's like it's sort of normal these days to have
Because
something
it
like
got
that.
a bit tricky when you had to ride the mount and at the same time, select what item you want to use or look for an item in your inventory
Right.
or, do something, get something in the wheel. It just was pretty cumbersome.
Yeah. Dude, it looks awesome. How was the performance and what were you running it on?
So running it on a 3090, my processor is a 7800 3DX Ryzen.
Mhm.
I may have butchered that, but yeah, close enough. And yeah, it ran okay. I was sort of at 50 FPS in 4K. So not fully locked 60 for
Mhm.
the most part. But I also didn't go in and dial in settings. So it was just a high profile and pretty much out of the box.
Yeah, so do you think 30 FPS will be pretty solid for consoles then from what you played?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And they can pull back a lot of the settings and particle effects and stuff. There was quite a bit of that
Was there?
going on.
Anybody in
Yeah.
chat, I was asking people what weapons they liked and if there's anything in particular that you want to ask Johnny about the beta for Wilds. I would just say the only other thing I want to know, first of all, I'm assuming when you cook shit, it still shows the big FMV of cats cooking food. Like in Worlds.
I didn't actually cook.
Okay, so no cooking.
Funny enough.
And
not
then
to mention it.
next up, how was how did you find
Like
this?
they did in Dragon's Dogma as well.
Yeah. How did you find the story? Did it set up any story, or was it just like boom, you're playing?
There is something. It's pretty thin in the beta.
Okay.
It's kind of like, hey, we're throwing you out into this open world. There's some characters that are introduced.
Prepare your ass.
You have a handler.
Right.
Prepare your ass. You're pretty much like shoved into the wasteland.
Okay.
And it's you, your handler, your cat. And yeah, you have a cat like in Rise that
Mhm.
follows you, your Palico. And you're free to do what you want. You have some targets to hunt after the initial tutorial segment.
Mhm.
And you go out there, you're looking for, like, the first mission you have is find the alpha. So you go to this place where there are a bunch of monsters of the same type. So think about like bisons or something,
Mhm.
like super overgrown bisons. And you're looking for the alpha. And then what you want to do is you want to toss some dung at it to separate it from the group so that you can hunt it down. So that's sort of the dynamic.
That's how I
like
hunt.
finding your target
Just
and
throw
stuff.
some dung and stuff.
Yeah. Toss some dung.
Toss some dung.
But that's going to be a bigger part, I think. It's more like finding your target, and isolating them from the group and this type of stuff.
Okay.
It's also a bit
Asking
new.
people what they were using. It looks like Thomas says bow or DB or CB or IG. So double blade. Is that what that DB is? I don't know the acronyms for all the weapons in Monster
Dual
Hunter.
blades.
Dual
Yeah,
blades.
dual
Okay,
blade.
I was
The
right.
kitchen knives.
CB is chain. No, is
Curve? Or
what's CB, Johnny?
Cognitive behavioral therapy, of course.
And IG is Instagram.
Yeah, of course.
He's gonna fight. He's gonna hunt down enemies using Instagram. Okay, yeah, he obviously plays a little bit. Then other people are saying hammer, sword and shield, katana. This is Javier says sword and shield and katana. Dylan says they have a benchmark test on Steam. Okay, so that's good. I think that's actually
they do.
You might want to test that. Monster Hunter Wild, I'm thinking of going double blades with different elements on each to exploit different weaknesses, Dave says. Javier says there seems to be a story with cool cinematics. Jesus Crest says switch axe maybe forever.
They had cinematics. I wouldn't hold your breath for like an incredible plot. That's not the vibe I'm getting.
Yeah.
And neither is the vibe I got in any Monster Hunter. So
Charge Blade and
just temper your expectations.
Charge Blade and IG looks like Insect Glaive.
There you go. Yeah.
CB is Chatterbait. Flexing says, yeah, exactly. Chatterbait and Instagram. Overall, it looks good. I mean, this month is racked with games. Like
that's a different kind of hunting.
Yeah, well, yeah, still hunting. Yeah, that's true. different style. Just different game, man. Man's most dangerous game. Alp says, what do people love about Monster Hunter? What is the component that sucks you in? I know it's huge, but I'd love to hear. People in chat, feel free to respond to them. I would say for me, Monster Hunter definitely came on late. I was a late entry to that. But for me, it was, I don't know. It's got a little bit of difficulty like a Dark Souls. I don't mean it's like Dark Souls. I just mean it's a little more difficult on the more difficult side, which a lot of games that look like that, I would expect more of the Devil May Cry or something. Maybe I sort of thought that. And then the different understanding different hunting elements. Traps are fun. I think traps are cool. They were good in Horizon Zero Dawn as well. I like that kind of stuff. I like sort of trying to figure out. And also, I remember in one of them attacking a creature and it ran, and that was awesome because you don't see creatures even lions. If you see two lions fight, want to run off at some.
Yeah, I saw that. Like the monster I was chasing walked into some giant snake thing, and the snake started fighting and like completely, what do you call it when the snakes like completely surround the target? Looking to like crunch it, but it was way too big, so the snake actually looked tiny compared to it was good. It was really well done, the interaction.
What were you saying, Silver? Were you saying something, Silver?
I was just Coil was
Coil.
Yeah,
right.
Oh, gotcha. Also, when it comes down to it, this will be the first. Let's see, Rise was on Switch, right? And then ported over. Okay, so this will be the first one where like these will be the base systems, I think, or generally the base systems. So that's also exciting to find.
Yeah, it's a different team too that develops the PC or the, what would you say, like the full fat version. And the portable versions are a slightly different team, even though they obviously inherit from each other.
Yeah.
So the Rise team was slightly different.
You mean slightly different, or were they fully like not included? Like
they are technically separate teams. I'm just assuming there would be overlap because obviously the games are very similar.
Okay. Jesus Crest says, awesome fight. He's talking to Alps. He says, awesome fights, ability to make multiple builds, and challenge. Yeah. I guess that's pretty much exactly. Yeah, it's exactly why.
I think weapon mastery is a big thing too, because you're left to your own devices, and the feeling that you're starting to deal much more damage as you learn to use your weapon is really engaging.
Yeah.
I think.
I would agree with that. Joggle the Toggle says, my first Monster Hunter was World. Loved the different monster types, the different armor types that came with it, and the different environments you find them in. Environments, good point. Environments are a big deal. I did like that I was always going to unique places and killing the things that lived there peacefully before I arrived. I always like going into nature, and it's like, I am going to destroy everything at this particular spot. And also their designs.
Yeah. And it's funny how...
Go ahead.
Go on.
No, go for it. No, what were you going to say?
No, we have a very shallow justification for what we're doing, hunting all these monsters.
Oh, yeah.
I think we were like trying to balance the ecosystem or something by slaying and enslaving a bunch of monsters.
Makes perfect sense. I was just going to say the bat guy in Wilds or in World, the one, he looks like a bat and blows up with air. And
With the poison?
with the I don't remember if it's poison. I just remember it's a giant it's a bat that can get huge, like and it's floating
Puff
around.
itself.
Yeah, dude, the first time I saw that I was like, that is one part sort of cute in a weird way, and I don't use the word cute very often, but there's something about it that looked like a small like a small puppy or whatever. Well, but a floating filled gas evil puppy, but still it looked awesome. And I remember thinking, man, I don't think I would see that enemy in any other game, like just the designs are cool. I actually like the designs of the side characters more than most of the bosses. I know Puffy Bat, is that the name? Okay, well that makes sense. No attempt to give it a Gilgarosh name or something like that, but yeah, very cool designs. I'm excited to get that one. That comes out what, February 28th, right? Last day of February,
Yes.
I think.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Yeah, the enemy design is great. Seeing them for the first time can be pretty special. I would agree with that because I don't think I'll ever forget seeing Puffy Bat, perfect name, showing up. And I remember just playing and going like, what in the hell is, like, what am I going to have to do? What is it? What's it going to try to do? There's all these different facets that go into it. I do want to talk about, and we can talk about this with Monster Hunter because you and I talked about changes and stuff for games, but Civ 7's reviews have been sort of, I've seen good ones. People really like it. That's pretty normal. You see really bad ones. But in general, the one thing that I have been seeing a bunch of people have issues with is that it feels like Civ made a lot of changes, and maybe there were too many ideas that were changed because some of them are pretty core facets to how civilizations worked. And I think if you see the difference between like Civ and Wilds sort of builds on stuff, adds things in, slightly adjusts stuff, where Civ, at least from what I'm reading, made some pretty big changes. I was just wondering, like, when you guys see, let's say if you saw Wilds, like, or whenever you see a sequel, do you ever see a sequel and you, like, there's something that maybe it's even a game you guys like the original and you don't like the next one of, where something changed so dramatically that it just didn't feel like the thing anymore? Because that's what I'm hearing with Civ is people are like, whatever it is may be enjoyable when they patch it up, but it doesn't feel like Civ anymore. It feels like something else. And I don't mean the typical bullshit where somebody says, this isn't my Skyrim anymore, whatever. I'm talking about a true game, like where there was such a switch. Or maybe,
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Assassin's Creed Origins for me, definitely.
Yeah, it's a big switch. It's a big switch. Yeah, where it felt like something.
Didn't feel like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, Warriors Creed.
Or it did and it didn't, because it kind of still did with the like historical exploration of Egypt and the pyramids and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
That did feel Assassin's Creed to me. But like the gear system and whatnot, all of that started to feel really divergent, and then came Odyssey after that, and that felt like a definitive break from what I had perceived Assassin's Creed to be up to that point.
Yeah. And I mean, it seems to have worked for those, but at the same time not worked. And then with Civ 7, it seems to have really just not worked overall. I'm excited to play Civ 7 at some point. I still want to play it.
Yeah, so am I.
I do. When I did read how it's doing ages, it reminds me of that Mankind game that came out a couple months ago. I reviewed it even, and I'm fucking spacing on the name. Not Nura. It was like
Humankind.
Isn't Humankind the chimpanzee one? I'm talking about the Civ style one that came out a couple months ago. That is
Humankind.
Is that Humankind? Okay, man.
The Civ style one. Humankind is a Civ style game. I don't remember if it was a couple of months ago or longer than that.
Aura Alps is saying, yeah, Aura or Era. And it was even spelled weird, though it's supposed to be Era pronunciation wise. It also did the thing where you would be going in a Civ style, and then when it went to the next one, things would change pretty dramatically, and it would it had this break to it. And I feel like Civ, from what I'm reading, does the same thing, where people that when they go, they don't feel like the continuation is there anymore. It feels like it sort of broke the mold. I don't know. Maybe they think, or maybe they're talking to people where that's a big deal. Maybe there's something that I'm missing, and that playtesters or developer, people who make the games feel that we want that. It doesn't feel like something I necessarily want. If it worked, I would, but I've seen now 2 games do it where it doesn't seem like that's sort of maybe it's just going to take a couple cracks at it. I don't know. Civ games have changed a lot though too between each
Yeah.
Civ. I mean, it's not like each Civ has been identical. They have made some pretty dramatic changes. Were you going to say something, Johnny?
The main thing that I've read across most reviews is that the UI seems really lackluster.
I did see that too.
And that's really important in those games, right? Because I mean that's a big part of the interaction with the game. And I think
for sure.
that's probably outside of if you forget about some of the changes and decisions and streamlining and things, I think the UI not being up to standards is probably, the unforgivable part.
Right. I mean, if you can't even understand how you're interacting with the changes, then all you're going to see is difference. You're just going to be sitting there complaining about the entire thing. Yeah, I don't know, man. I definitely want to check it out. I sort of liked some of the stuff I saw, but then at the same time, you take everybody's reviews, you sort of read what even the people like. If somebody likes the change, it still resonates that there's a massive change. So the people who didn't like it and the people who liked it, they still both indicate that there's a massive change. And that I've also haven't seen anybody talk positively about the UI at all. I don't think I've seen one review talk positively about that UI. So whatever's going on with the UI, it's bad. It's not like Kingdom Come where it's cumbersome. It seems like it is genuinely a problem in that game, which is so weird. How do you mess up? Well, whatever. I mean, I don't know. It does seem odd that would be the thing that got messed up, but that's true about the UI. This is Nangle saying that's true about the UI. You have to click to go deeper into menus to get info instead of having it on the screen. I guess they made it more slick. Dude, Age of Wonders is still my favorite ever. It has nested menus that leaves up the old tutorial, whatever, and then it clicks and brings up the other ones. So as you can basically go deeper, but you still have all the other stuff you've read on the screen. It's hard to describe until you play it, and it's probably one of my favorite UIs I've ever used in a game. Age of Wonders, what is that, 4 now? I think that was Age of Wonders.
4. Yeah.
4? Alp says, Karak, I know you buy games, but are you already previewing Avowed? I previewed Avowed a month and a half ago, I think, and then just decided to not do the preview because I was just going to wait for the review. I can say, based on preview gameplay that I experienced, I did find it to be a good deal better than what I had thought. This is all based on my preview time. If I'm reviewing it, then you'll see that when that pops up. But I will say that I was pleasantly surprised when I played it because I personally feel Avowed trailers were fucking horrendous. I'm sorry, but those trailers, the combat, it just, once I got hands-on with it, I was like, oh, I get it. Now I understand, but whatever was going on in your trailers was not, it's not the same as playing that game. There was a huge, and I saw a lot of
I'm glad you said that.
People hands-on prior who said the same thing even before I got hands-on. They were doing early previews, and they were like, dude, this is actually controlling quite a bit better than I thought. It feels better than I thought. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I've seen those previews. But what were you going to say, Johnny?
No, I'm glad you're saying that because I thought the trailers didn't show anything exciting about the combat.
Yeah. Yeah, my preview time was a big step up from what I expected. Yeah, and double wielding like Harry Potter wands is enjoyable shit.
Yeah,
and having like a gun in one hand, wand in the other, switching out quite quickly to ranged. I will say my time with the preview. This is all based on my preview time. The bow and ranged combat was much more enjoyable than I expected because I am not a bow and arrow fan in most games. And that was one of the first times where I've been like, oh shit, I might try something else for once. Usually there's that go-to in those games where you're like, all right, this is sort of, I'll try something, but this is sort of what I'll stick with. So, but back to Civ and changes. Yeah, I don't know, man. We're seeing, like Silver said, I mean, obviously Assassin's Creed is probably one of the biggest, success or not financially, it's still one of the biggest changes I think we've seen in games that is somewhat turned out. But it does feel like lately companies are trying to do that. What were we gonna say?
Another I remember that was huge was the sequel to Deus Ex, Invisible War.
Oh, Invisible War. Yeah, that was a big change. That was a huge change. I liked it by itself, but as a Deus Ex, it felt weird. Felt like a
Yeah, I mean the
Deus Ex
switch to the
Light.
console that forced the like smaller loaded
levels.
areas
Yeah.
was something that a lot of people really didn't like.
How about Max
Split
Payne?
up by loading screens and whatnot.
Because I know you're a Max Payne 3 fan, but did you feel like 1 and 2
Yeah.
and 3 were quite different? Because I did. I felt that.
I mean, three is substantially different from 1 and 2. First of all, like 3 has none of the Remedy style fourth wall breaks, winking at the camera, as it were, kind of. 3 just kind of plays it straight.
It does play it straight, doesn't it?
Which the first 2 Max Payne games definitely did not, and had everything from Twin Peaks references to winking at the camera to like the comic strip, knowingly referenced a story within a storytelling within a story and whatnot. There was constant meta narrative within the first 2 Max Payne games. That was completely gone in Max Payne 3. But like gameplay wise, I adored Max Payne 3 as the sort of the quintessential Max Payne game in that essence. Like, and still one of my favorite third-person action games.
That's because I also believe that while I liked Max Payne 1 and 2, they were still crunchy. Number one, there were some really amazing things we got to see, and they were ushering in some tech that was amazing. But 3's gameplay raised up above 1 and 2. I feel 1 and 2 are
Max Payne 1 in particular. I think Max Payne 2 was really helped by the Havoc physics engine.
Yeah, definitely.
And the transition to that.
But you felt 1 was pretty, like, I guess,
was definitely crunchy.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Another game that changed a lot, but not in gameplay. But I think people agree with me and then disagree in the exact same sentence. So every time I even see the game, I feel this way. I truly believe that GTA 4 is a great deal different than all the others. And whether it's
no question about it.
Tone, the focus of everything, there is something about 4
Both.
that even if you love 4, I'm not saying you can't love it. I thought it was very enjoyable. But there's something about that game that even when I see people play it, there's something about it that is a different thing, man. It's like they split off. And they did split off. They did Lost in the Damned, and they did
It's significantly more depressing than the other Grand Theft Auto
significantly,
games.
man. Yeah, significantly. I mean, and which is funny because Silver, somebody gets stomped to death in number 5, and somehow it becomes somewhat funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not supposed to be, but you're like, but you play 4, and you're like, God damn.
But it plays it's played in absurdity.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's more like a Quentin Tarantino kind of violence than it is.
Yeah.
Where 4 is almost like, a
Slavic
grindhouse,
depression,
but it's like Slavic depression.
Yeah, war in the Balkans. Yeah.
yeah, that is true. That is exactly what 4 is, man. I mean, 4, dude, I watch somebody play it. I watch somebody beat that game. I would have no issues, but at the same time, I would feel like I needed like some laughter and an occasional, Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode between, because it was
levity.
so
Yeah,
and Silver hit it. I think there's almost a sarcasm in 5-4 or 5-3, all the others, that you can sort of be like, okay, yeah, this is over the top, blah blah blah. But then you play it almost like it never breaks. I feel like 4 just never breaks. It never gives you a break. It's just constantly there. But again, the gameplay,
No, it doesn't.
for the most part,
and
is still the same.
especially culminating with the ending.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, and Lost in the
In that
Damned
game.
is pretty dark, but there's something that still feels a little bit more satire even in that one. But it could just be the characters, right? May just
and then sort of Ballad of Gay Tony is sort of a return to form.
Absolutely.
Or return to GTA absurdity.
Yep.
With characters like Yusuf Amir and stuff.
Somebody brought up Dragon Age 1 and 2, and Witcher 1 and 2 is my example. Witcher 1 and 2 to me were like, what the fuck? They were like opposite ends,
for sure.
of a spectrum that even when I look at them, I'm like, that has to have been made by a completely different company. That is so weird. But Dragon Age 1 and 2 is also a great example. I hadn't even thought about that, but what 2 felt weird.
I actually know one for you as well, Karak, that I know you probably want to forget, though. The Thief reboot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I got another one, too.
That one is...
XCOM Bureau. Something.
Oh, Bureau. Yeah, XCOM Bureau. Even though they weren't going even for anything like the XCOM games. Yes, that game was offshoot, and I know people pretty much dislike it other than me. Yeah. I did like the change up.
It was a spin-off.
I'm right there with you. I liked it a lot.
I liked it a lot. I remember Total Biscuit gave me some shit for that. It was either prior to the podcast or after a podcast when we were chatting, and I was like, "Hey, listen, man, I don't know what to say. I sort of dug it. You know, it was one of those things where it was a different spinoff, but
it was enjoyable for what it was. Yeah.
Back to Thief. That's another example of a huge change that it would be great to openly and nicely get the developers for the originals and for the new one and just be like, why? Not why as in why we're going to, we're so petulant lately. It's like, why? I don't mean it that way. I would really like to know the genuine why. Just did it come near what you thought it was going to be at the end? And if it did, what information did you have that you were under the assumption that we needed to do these different things?
What was the
that resulted in this game that was
I mean, for me, I ended up enjoying it as a stealth game, but that was because I completely forced myself to completely divorce it from
Thief.
It being a Thief game and think, I can't think of it I shouldn't think of it as a Thief game. I should just think of it as a stealth game on its own terms. And I was able to sort of enjoy it on those terms.
Do you think,
rather than the familiarity I had with the Thief series?
Do you feel that Splinter Cell ever did that with how many Splinter Cells were we?
Oh, for sure.
When it stopped,
yeah.
Were we 5 deep?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot. I know a lot of people felt that way with Splinter Cell Conviction.
That's the one I was going to bring up. Yeah. Which one's the one in the prison?
But for me, that's Double Agent.
Okay, sorry. Continue.
And that was the one for me. That's the one where Lambert dies.
Mm-hmm.
Canonically.
Spoiler, 30 years ago. Anybody? I'm just joking. Anyway. Yeah.
And even though his death is also referenced in the other games after the event.
Those games felt pretty jumpy to me.
I mean, Double Agent to me felt like a little ambitious, too ambitious for its own good. I don't think it really managed to execute what it wanted to do all that well.
Right.
It didn't, a lot of the set pieces felt way too constrictive and way too scripted compared to earlier Splinter Cell missions. I honestly can't even remember a single outside. Yeah, no, I do. I remember the cruise ship. The cruise ship mission is, and the prison is pretty much the only two missions I remember from.
Yeah,
from Double Agent.
I don't even remember a fucking cruise ship. I remember a cruise ship. Man, that doesn't bode well that I don't remember. I mean, especially because either it would be like good or bad, and it's in a package that had changed. Usually I would remember that. I remember.
And
it just felt different.
I loved Conviction, especially because I loved the co-op campaign. I loved the co-op aspects or co-op options in that game, even though they didn't work properly because Ubisoft's servers were shit, so I couldn't get it to work. I couldn't connect to friends and stuff. But that and Blacklist, I really, really enjoyed.
Let's talk about another series, game. Silver, that you and I have both experienced that has changed dramatically, and I'm glad we brought this up because, my God, Rainbow Six. Dude, that's gone from the original ones to, was it Vegas to...
Yeah,
now Rainbow Six.
Rainbow Six Vegas transitioned into the third-person action shooter. Yeah,
dude, man, huge changes on those. I mean, it's cool too that we have that menu that it needs to or can change because, I mean, there's not a lot of company like Ubisoft does own 2 or 3 of the titles we're talking about. But
and Ghost Recon did the same as well, transitioned to third-person action shooter.
Yeah, I mean, Ghost Recon was a huge change. Like a massive change to those games. Yeah, that's crazy. Did Packley is saying, did Blacklist bomb? Oh, and SBZ says RE3 to 4
No.
changed for the better. That's a good point.
It didn't bomb.
It
I don't
didn't
think.
bomb?
I don't think it did. It didn't do like blockbuster numbers or anything. It and it may have been a little below projections, maybe, but it certainly didn't bomb. I don't think.
I didn't think any of them had technically bombed. Solar says Splinter Cell and Blacklist are the only Splinter Cells I've played. I enjoyed them, but they are super different from the other ones. They are super different. I mean, Splinter Cell's cool in the fact that I'm okay with them changing overall, but go ahead.
And I think probably Blacklist has the Sam Fisher that feels the most substantially different from all the other Sam Fishers, where he doesn't really feel like Sam Fisher anymore. He just
Gennaro.
He feels kind of more like Jack Bauer.
Yep. Yeah.
Or something.
And I'm sorry, but I think when you look
doesn't really have any personality anymore.
I think when you look at the big companies, Silver, I need to change that because that is actually not fair to anybody. It's not just the big companies. Small companies do this too. Sorry. I know that'll piss people off. But when a Jack Bauer is popular, right? When something like that is so popular, you will see it fade into games over time. Whether they're saying, oh, what do people like about this character? Well, they may not even know they're doing it. It's that they're imbibing the fiction. And then when they go back to make the next game, some idea from that's how writers end up getting in trouble. You hear about a writer, somebody 20 years later, a writer will be like, I wrote about that in 1980s. This guy copied me in 2000. You read this stuff and you're like, no, not really. It's just your idea they sort of built on and they came up with their own. They've got some of your ideas. It just happens as you imbibe stuff. The stories you tell, the things that you do when you're creating. But Jack Bauer's a good example. Jack Bauer's a very good example. That is sort of what it felt like when all things said and done. I hadn't thought about old Jack. I only watched a couple seasons of 24. That was a very hard show for me to get into. Which seems weird.
Yeah, I couldn't really get into it much either.
It's weird for me because I'm already watching 2 shows at the same time half the time. So I'm like, oh, dude, the same show that's 2 shows at the same time? I would think that would be for me, and instead I was like, I don't get it. I don't understand. What other ones, man? This is interesting to me. What other
like one that was mentioned.
Go ahead.
Oh, go for it.
No, that's what I was gonna do, so go ahead, mention one from chat.
Final Fantasy 16. Aries was saying still enjoyed it, like Silver enjoyed the Thief reboot, hated it as a Final Fantasy game, but a decent action title.
So like divorce it from he's saying divorce it from Final Fantasy. And just,
and I agree with her in a way because they tried to tell a Game of Thrones, grim fantasy story. And it turns out that a lot of the enjoyment from Final Fantasy games is the camaraderie and the levity moments in between the difficult times, the hardship. And that one felt a little bit like nobody was ever having fun along the way.
I got a lot of shit for liking boy band Final Fantasy, and a lot of people were like, oh, that was too fun. And I was all, dude, I don't think it's too fun. I think
they indulged a bit, maybe, but I liked it. Yeah.
It's Final Fantasy. You're riding giant chickens. Like, what the fuck? How far are we going to go here and say you're indulging shit? But I would agree that 16, it wasn't just the story, the gameplay. See, I take it like this. The reason why I was okay with 16 being still a Final Fantasy is because you have an MMO that's been going for 7,000 years anyway, that's got its own thing off to the side. And then you've got the old ones. You've got side games. You've got X13 times 3, the 33rd and a third. You have all these fucking...
Yeah.
So to me, I wasn't bothered that they just said, we're doing a different thing. But at the same time, when you play it, even the overland map feels different. The travel feels different. All those 16 definitely has massive changes to it. But to me, it's still a Final Fantasy game. It's just completely a different focus because the MMO of Final Fantasy I do not like. I know it's loved, but the reason why is because the way the story's doled out doesn't feel the pace is different than a single player game, which is it's okay to say because they are different. And I didn't like that one, but I still consider it a Final Fantasy game overall.
Yeah, it is glacial. even the people who like it admit it.
What about, was it Final Fantasy Strikers or what was the one that I played with the horrendous interiors that just made me want to die inside? It was
Strangers of Paradise?
Was that what it was? Strangers of Paradise? Oh man.
I believe so. Yeah. Rough.
Fucking rough. Man, I remember, oh dude, that was a rough game. Man, that'll make you rethink everything about reviewing games. Let me tell you, where you're just sitting there going like, oh shit, I gotta play this. Like, what the fuck? Nothing against anybody who made it. Halo took liberties from Larry Niven's Ring World. Oh, okay, that's cool. God of War, I would say God of War.
Yeah,
is a really good example,
for
right?
sure.
Yeah, changed third person.
For sure, it is.
Kratos is tangentially like he was, but I still think he changed pretty mightily from the as a persona and stuff. He definitely changed. Which Jaffe did. Jaffe was the guy who did the first. Wasn't it David Jaffe who did 1 and 2? Am I wrong on that? For some reason, I thought David Jaffe was.
I have no idea.
I thought it was David Jaffe for 1, 2, and 3, and then it switched over to Corey or something like that. I can't remember how many God of Wars there are. So anybody in chat, you probably know better than me when it comes down to it. Jaffe did 1, so he made it basically. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Helldivers 1 to 2. There's another good example. Helldivers 1 to 2 dramatically changed. I still think Helldivers 1 and 2 have the same personality though. I feel like 1 and 2 overall.
For sure. I would say the only real dramatic change there was the perspective from the isometric to the
and
first person.
Risk of Rain did a similar thing. They went from 2D to 3D with Risk of Rain 2. But, you know, like Silver says, similar, same soul of a game, but different presentation.
Those are all good examples, man. I hadn't thought of, I really had not thought of those at all.
Helldivers 2 to me still felt recognizably like Helldivers 1.
For sure.
I still think that's because its personality is bigger than most games' personalities, and they nailed it in 1 and 2.
It's a mix of the personality, and then that such a core part of the game is the stratagems and typing in the quick typing in the stratagem codes.
Yeah.
Which was something that was retained as largely the same in Helldivers 2.
I'm seeing Jesus just said Yakuza. Action to turn-based. Oh, and Scott just mentioned Fallout 2 to 3. Holy shit. All those are really good examples. Fallout 2 to 3, I can just say I got to live through the toxicity of gamers even back then. And I hate using the word toxicity because I think a lot of it's just really like either people being dicks or being passionate and really liking something like I've done myself. But Fallout 2 to 3, I remember the vial being spilled about that. Like, how dare you? How dare you switch to a completely different viewpoint? Go ahead.
I have another one as well.
Go for it.
EA making Syndicate into a first-person shooter.
Oh my god, dude, that's bringing out that's some ancient ass. That's a long pull. What the fuck? Syndicate, the shooter was like 12, 15 years ago, wasn't it? That's a long pull, man.
I think it was like 10.
Oh, I feel
10, like maybe it was 15 years ago. Shit.
I
think it was probably like 10 or 13 years ago or something.
Because it was prior to me.
I think it was the 2010s or something.
I think it was because I was on another website.
2012.
I didn't even have YouTube, I don't think, and I've been doing it for 10 years. I'm pretty sure Syndicate's a long pull. Like, that's a 2-day. Like, some people are going to be like, dude, I'm 14 right now. What are you talking about? Phoenicia says they think it's 2012 or 11. Wizard, the question is, what games have made dramatic changes in sequels? For example, people have been talking about
it didn't
Fallout
work,
2 to 3.
where the change made them feel disconnected from the rest of the series.
Yeah, disconnected. And it could even be a good disconnect, which is less often. But I would say, okay, I get that people aren't, I understand that in many ways they are alike. But I would say the change, I don't love this as much as other people. I would say the change between Alan Wake 1 and 2 is pretty dramatic to me. Dramatic enough that I really had difficulty. Yeah. I liked the sense of continuity. There's a sense of story continuity and character continuity in 1 that is simply not replicated in 2, even if 2 is a profoundly more maybe enticing, varied title and maybe a good deal less clumsy than 1. I can admit that without feeling like I'm beating up my own baby. But I really do feel like when I played 2, I was like, this is sort of Alan Wake in name. Not name alone, that's totally unfair, but you get my drift. It's just, it was a huge, it's dramatic
Right.
change in the delivery of pretty much everything.
Yeah, it was.
Then some people are saying Metal Gear open world in 5.
Especially the squeaky shoes.
You and your shoes. The other one,
I know.
This is not as big of a change, but I want to point this out because if Absy is listening or does listen, if we don't point this out, I do think Metro Exodus was a fairly large change as well. From the linear stuff to that open hub that we got, where you go from the Metro games to something like Exodus, which I felt was a good change.
Also, frankly, it was. And before that, Last Light from 2033.
Yep.
Also a substantial change, honestly.
I agree. And I think maybe not always better, but to me, personally, I feel for the better. That's just me. Oh, here we go. Plague.
Yeah, I very much agree.
Plague, what's up, buddy? I hope you're doing well. He says, Mortal Kombat 4 to Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. MK stopped being an arcade game, transitioned entirely to 3D fighting with stance changes, only on consoles. Man, Deadly Alliance, dude. That game is so sexy. I loved those first switches to the new style of Mortal Kombat's, man. They just are not replicated anymore. Mortal Kombat hasn't changed. Speaking of not changing, man, every time I look at a new Mortal Kombat, I'm like, and they called the new one 1 or whatever, and I was all, yeah, it fits. I'm sorry, but not to be rude, but damn. Ooh, Oregon Fresh says Gambit system in Fallout or in Final Fantasy 12 was quite the change. It was, and I'll fight anybody who doesn't like it. That's just me. I love AI for like helping.
The thing with Final Fantasy is we can almost say every single entry there.
That's what I was trying to. Thank you.
7 is substantially different from 6, and 8 is substantially different from 7.
The MMO is
10 is substantially different from 9.
Exactly. And that's why
12 is substantially different from 10.
And that's why I'm okay with those changing. They don't feel like I feel like change is them. Like that is them versus most RPGs. It is part of it. Yeah. You look at Dragon Quest and you're like, that's Dragon Quest. It's like it's sort of all the same. Those kind of things. I feel that it dramatically changes I don't even know what they're going to deliver. In fact, the least amount of changes is probably remake and rebirth. And that's because it's all telling the same story and it's trying to move across, these two systems.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the least amount of changes in a game. SBZ says CNC Renegade. Yeah. Now, is CNC Renegade the one where you could go into first person? Is that the?
It was. You could. It wasn't just you could go. It was first person.
It was first person.
Yeah, it was a first person shooter.
Where
you played the commando.
It was janky, but I sort of dug it. Let's see what else.
Yeah, it was amazing fun, especially in multiplayer. As well.
Yeah, I really dug it.
Where it did in multiplayer, you actually played with the RTS perspective, which was a lot of really, really interesting.
Packley says Dragon Quest is the opposite, really conservative. Yeah, exactly. I think nothing against Dragon Quest. It is what it is, but I feel like they are delivering what they want to deliver, and we're not seeing
also
much changes.
Both Resident Evil 3 and 4, like with 4 being an even bigger change, but Resident Evil 3 was also a substantial change from 1 and 2, with it basically being a pursuit game throughout, where you're being chased by Nemesis with Jill, which a lot of players at the time didn't entirely jibe with.
Yeah. Can we just give
and then you have the transition to a third-person action game with 4.
With 4. And it transitioned to a Western-style horror game with 7. When it went to the VR where you could play, where it was in the house, which was I felt a different thematic change.
Very true.
I got to give hats off to fucking Capcom, though. I mean, when you look at a company, you look at all these companies and their delivery of successes across so many titles, Capcom's one of the...
I mean,
I
I
don't
don't
even
think
want to
there's
say
a
it out
publisher
loud.
that has a more diverse catalog of titles than
And-
Capcom.
And how about that? If they do, they're probably not as successful, because I do believe we give some shit sometimes to Ubisoft when we ignore that they do have some other stuff that they do. But when you look at Capcom, it's not just that they do those other ones, it's that for the most part, they're all good. And even their remakes, the only remake I have had an issue with, and a distinct issue with, that really confused me was 3, which is the super short one. And I felt that was a very odd remake. But other than that, I felt like, I mean, Dragon's Dogma, all that kind of stuff. It's just been like fantastic. Somebody said Microsoft. I would say, yeah, Forza. I thought Forza going from distinct tracks, racing and tracks going to Forza Horizon will probably always be one of the biggest changes I've seen. I mean, it probably wasn't possible in the old days to do what they did. So it all comes together at one time. But man, changing to Forza Horizon, I think, was such a good plan on there. Well, they didn't change. They do both. But let's see. When I found out Nemesis could open doors, I nearly crap myself. Oh, in Resident Evil? Yeah, that was, yeah, dude, they do a good job, man. They do a good job. Peno Hero, if that's right, says Capcom only sucks at multiplayer stuff. Do they? Shit, that might be right.
Well, they do Street Fighter, right? That has been very successful.
Except for 5, when it launched without a fucking story. I think 5 was considered a pretty big miss. But I think you're right. I think I think what he might mean is maybe, well, no, that's multiplayer. That's true. I'm trying to think of other Capcom games.
Well, Capcom does. No. What am I thinking? I was going to say Monster Hunter, but that's not.
That's Capcom.
Right.
That is Capcom.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
But I don't know.
What are you talking about? They do
because that's not really. I don't know if that's what he's talking about. I could be wrong on this. It sounded more along the lines of that we're not like thinking of like the title he's thinking of with multiplayer. I could be wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, I do know that with Monster Hunter, a lot of people have issues with how to get into the multiplayer. They felt they were always super clunky to do the multiplayer, but so is Dark Souls.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about clunky.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you, Pan. He does answer. He says Umbrella Corps and Exoprimal, etc. You are absolutely right. They have tried. I did Exoprimal with Abzy and really enjoyed some parts of it, but it was like a free-to-play / there was something about it that didn't feel cooked.
Yeah, and Umbrella Corp was pretty awful.
Yeah, and I don't mean cooked in the slang. I mean that it wasn't. It just wasn't ready. Not in the slang.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Even though that is the slang.
Well, no, I wouldn't say awful. It was just below middling.
Which one?
Be more generous. Umbrella Corp.
Oh my God.
That's the 4-player PvE shooter where you're playing as the Umbrella Squad.
What's the Metal Gear Solid one that sucked so bad that it
Metal Gear Survivor.
Oh, is that? Are you sure? Is it Survive? Survive.
That's Survivor, I think.
That's the like.
Isn't it Survivor or is it Survive? It's Survive or Survivor.
I think it's Survivor. That one sucked balls. Not them, obviously, not Capcom, but it just dawned on me that's.
That was Konami. Yeah.
I had a blast with Exoprimal. None of my friends liked it though. Yeah, I've been there. I know that feeling. Wizard says BioShock 3 felt like a different game than 1 and 2. I don't know. I felt there was a lot of similarities, but I get it. I understand that thought process. I still think.
I mean, the change in setting was definitely was the most significant aspect.
Yeah, it was pretty. I mean, it was definitely noticeable. Metal Gear Just Survive is what it's called. Is it called Metal Gear Survive?
Well, that was a spin-off, but yes, that was pretty bad.
Yeah. It was really not good. All the opposites of that. Let's see. Next up. So we talked about changes. Let me read some of the questions that we got from Patron before we move on, because I want to make sure I get these. Tyleron says, thanks for the amazing introduction to your Discord. I played some multiplayer with you and Brav back in the day. Woo. Brav. I've been a fan of the content going back to Sacred Citadel. What helps better? Oh, Patron or YouTube membership? They're identical, but with Patron now you get the same thing. They are identical, and I believe we get screwed the exact same amount. I think it's 50% goes to the platform, and then 50% goes to taxes, and that leaves me 0%. No, that's incorrect. But whatever it turns out to be, they're identical. Clipnuts says, "What's the way to get into voice chats the best? I always feel self-conscious." Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. If you're talking about random discords, you're talking about voice chat for Xbox, that kind of stuff. I mean, I tell people to mostly lurk for a while. If you're talking about ours, go in and introduce yourself, because we're talkers. So you'll go in and we're like, if you don't introduce yourself,
we might be yapping.
We'll be under the assumption that you do just want, you like to watch, as they say, you like to watch. But go in and introduce yourself to. If you join a particular group, a lot of discords for games have really good places to go into. And because everybody likes a particular game, or in this case, a Discord for me, or in the case of an Xbox party, just be aware that like each one has their own negatives. I don't think we have many, but an Xbox party might. Just watch out. They can be pretty rough.
Yeah.
Stripe says, "I never knew I wanted a riding video." Oh yeah, this is the one. "Until I saw your Kingdom Come horse riding video." Well, expect to see more. That is enjoyable to do. I'm glad you got some kind of humor out of it, at least. I had to cut a lot of stuff because of fucking bandits in that game. Man, there's a lot of bandits in that game. Let's see. I asked a bunch of other people. Yeah, you've noticed that. I asked people for their questions on Twitter. Ransom says, "Am I alone in thinking Final Fantasy VII Rebirth completely falls off the rail by Chapter 9? What is the game even about anymore? Just mini games and cutscenes. I'm kind of blown away at the reviews it got, considering the painfully bland and outdated design." No one's the only one, as I said. And he responded. I said, nobody's the only one. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Johnny.
I do think that's a bit of a minority view to say, like, with a broad brush, that the game is, I forget the words exactly he used, outdated, I think he said, or I think that's not tracking with my experience, at least. I do find that the final chapter did drag quite a bit. I do think that, story-wise. But overall, I found the open world to be one of the most inspired and fun open worlds that I've done recently, that I've played.
I will just say, I think that every single Final Fantasy in the world overstays its welcome by approximately 10 hours. So I sort of understand where he's coming from. Did it bother me? No, because I agree with Johnny. I think the open world has a leanness to it that's fairly substantially on the more positive side than the boring side. But at the same time, I do understand that most games have a slow part, but it also depends on how you interact with it, because it is an interactive game. So somebody can golden path it, chapter. They're maybe more difficult battles, but they're just boom, 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 boom. They're going through. Story feels like it's fairly straight in line. I did Kingdom Come Deliverance, and I feel like there's a part in there that was really slow, and it'll be quite interesting to see if people agree with me once they beat it. I think story is the hardest part to me to describe, but the gameplay, when he says it's just mini games, I think I understand exactly where they're coming from, which is that they feel like that's sort of all the new content that's coming, because it is rolling into the story. You've seen most of the bad guys. And so you've got just the not repetitiveness, but you have just the story here, the mini games here, and you're rolling to the main. That sort of happens with all games. That's why I feel Final Fantasy overstays its welcome. A lot of times I feel like they have 3 or 4 boss battles at the end, and I'm like, could you just have one? But I feel like most games these days want you to, they got to have the surprise boss, right? Or they got to have some guardian before the last boss. And we now all know that already. As gamers, we've experienced it, so it's no longer a surprise. It feels like the status quo. Speaking of, nope, can't speak about it. Fuck. I'll say that when a game gives you the option, no, nothing. I don't even want to go there.
Can't say that. I agree, though. They do that, Karak. They do like the final chapter is always stretched out beyond belief.
Yeah.
It's not only Final Fantasy, by the way. This
It
is
is
a
not
trope
only
in
Final
JRPGs.
Fantasy. That's a absolutely. Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
even Metaphor did the same thing, where
Mhm.
like fights now have 2-3 phases, and you thought this was my final
Yakuza.
form,
Dude, Yakuza.
but actually,
Yakuza loves to throw you
yeah.
a fucking guy who then shows up with another guy who's a best friend of a pal, who's a best friend of a friend, who's a friend of a dude, and you're like,
and now they're
"Jesus, man."
recharged.
And now they're recharged. Oh
Yeah.
my god. Especially when you beat somebody too quick. Have you guys ever done that? Where you're hitting a guy and you're like, dude, I got this mode down. And you just rolling the guy, and then all of a sudden, about 3/4 of the way through, you're like, nope, something's gonna
That's
happen.
not the real fight.
That's not the real fight.
Yeah.
And instead of feeling good, you're thrown into this fucking dishwasher of bullshit where you're like, okay, what's gonna be rearranged in this second stage? And yeah, it's JRPGs. I mean, you could say in some ways Western games do it occasionally too. I mean, I guess it's RPGs in a way. They really like to do that. I'm trying to remember Mass Effect. Mass Effect
Didn't really do that, I don't
didn't
think.
do it in 1, right? I'm trying to think of 2. 2, you have
They
your
didn't
heist.
do it in 2 or 3 either, really.
They didn't.
I don't think.
Okay, so Mass Effect, despite
Or
not like-
even in Andromeda.
Andromeda.
I don't think they really did that.
yeah, so they were devoid of that, which is I think a massive
Yeah.
plus. Yeah. Next up, this is an awesome question, guys. When I read it, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up Twitter. Michael says, when are destructible environments going to be the standard in games? So the reason why this is interesting is, do you know how much development time that would take if like everything was destructible in a game? And how you'd have to figure out how enemies worked? But I also think I know where he's coming from, because there's, you get games that like remastered, which admittedly is like a remake.
Yeah, I
of
mean, we've been asking that since Red Faction,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Pretty much.
But at the same time, it's like I don't want everything destructible either, because I admit I've used those walls to save my life in fights. So
Yeah.
it depends on the game, but I do understand where they're coming from. I'd definitely like to see it more. I wouldn't want to see GTA have it, because at some point you'd have to have carpenters come out and refix everything. Otherwise your city'd look like dog shit after a month of playing GTA. Like, imagine if we were able to just blow everything up. It'd be fun, but at some point you'd be like, all right, there's nothing left here. What games, how about this? What games would benefit on their sequels with destructible, like semi-destructible that don't have it currently? I think Assassin's Creed, but it's gone towards Assassins now more. And the Japanese one, you probably won't be cutting. You can break some walls in that. So I guess take that away. Maybe not that one. What about a new Rainbow
Arma
Six?
would be a big one, right?
Arma would be a big one because you can't destroy anything. It's really static in that game. I was just playing that. It's noticeably static, especially with the amount of ordnance that goes off in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. What are some big games right now that are a God of War? I would like to see more destructible stuff. I feel like God of War feels like a track with another track in a track sometimes when I'm playing the newer ones, the 2 new ones. I was like, okay, you know what I mean? It's like, do you want to go left or right? But guarantee you, it's going to meet in the fucking center. No matter what, like, you're just sort of, that you're going to get there. Destructible environments would be pretty cool there. Some bits of destructibility.
Yeah. Ghost of Tsushima had a bit of that. You could like break down doors and different things.
Right. That would be cool. What are some other ones that are coming? Let's see. GTA is a big one, but I just don't see it. Call of Duty. I do believe that Call of Duty would you've got some destructive stuff now in multiplayer in particular.
They implement a Rainbow Six Siege kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I wonder how that would change even the campaign and the play testing. But I would be all for seeing that. Anybody in chat? What about you guys in chat? Destructibility. Let's see. Powder Cake says skyscrapers can't be coming down with guns. Exactly. Warpig and Oregon Fresh agree with me. COD. That's awesome. So we're all agreeing on that. Dylan says the level destruction in Marvel Rivals is really well done. Really? I don't think I've seen anybody break anything in Marvel Rivals. Maybe that's just the players I've been watching. Have you guys watched any Marvel Rivals? I didn't even know.
Not at all.
Not really.
Okay.
No.
That's fair. SBZ says Red Dead Redemption 3. That would be cool if, depending on where it is and when it is. Battlefield.
What are you destroying, those shacks? Like,
well, you do a lot of dynamite, and I do think that enemies in Red Dead have a tendency to hide behind stuff that doesn't make any sense. I think bullet penetration would be pretty cool. A little bit more bullet penetration. It doesn't have. We should. That's probably unfair. I should have said not only destructibility, but the ability to fire through something. Because how many times have you guys played one of these games and they're behind a fucking wax paper and you shoot it and the bullet stops?
Not just like a wax paper, a leaf.
A leaf. Yeah, true. I have seen that too. I have seen that where you're like whipping out some guns and you're firing and they're behind a bush and they're like, you cannot get me.
Doesn't even have to be a bush. It can just be the leaf from a tree.
Yeah.
Just a single leaf.
A single leaf goes and you're like, I just lost my game. What the fuck? That is so true. Let's see. How have we not seen level destruction in MV? MV. I don't know what that is. I don't know what MV is. Do you mean Marvel Rivals? Do you mean MR? Looking at where V is on the thing. Because we haven't played it. We just said that. We're watching other people, and haven't seen it. Dylan says, here's a really cool Unreal Engine blog post. They talk about it in part of this for anyone interested in just general cool talk. I'll check that out. Twisted Metal with full destruction would be great. What about Rampage? Jeez, Rampage was such a good game, man, back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, if we could get a new Rampage game, it would have to have destructible environments. For sure, that's core part of the game.
It's a core part of the game, dude. And make your own
much as it is with
something.
Earth Defense Force.
Yeah, except, okay. Can we reverse the conversation just for a second and talk about games that should fucking change? I'm sorry. Come on. It's time. Those guys.
It's time.
It's guys.
They've been making the same
guys
game for
please,
decades.
man. I want to like those games, and I've liked a couple, but that is a series that at some point when I see people coming into, I'm like, listen, it has not advanced, and even if you ignore that it hasn't advanced, it's still pretty rough. And you get people trying to defend it, and they're like, oh, it's always been that way. And I'm like, I just don't understand that thought process when we are so far beyond it in tech that I would just like to see it step up a little bit. Just a little bit.
A little.
When you
incremental.
When you see creatures bounce into the air when they're dead and flip over, and I'll be like, oh, come on, man. This is like PS2. And somebody would be like, that's the way it's always been. Exactly.
That's part of them flying up into the air like that is part of the hilarity, though, of the gameplay.
Are we going to get into bugs make games better? Because I don't want to get into this
I don't think it's a bug, though.
It's not. I'm just saying I feel that's... You could still do it with a new graphics engine, man.
Oh, for sure you could.
You can still bring it up so it looks like a Genesis game.
I certainly wouldn't complain if the graphics got a bump.
Packley says Earth Defense Force is like a one-man project. That's rude. That's rude, but true. Totally true. Oregon Fresh says a new Rampage game would be sick. Yeah, if people don't know what we're talking about, Rampage was an old arcade originally, then it went to consoles, and you could be a lizard man, gorilla, ape, like
King
Kong, and then a wolfman, giant wolfman. Yeah. And all you did in this game, you could be on the ground if you wanted, but it was skyscrapers you could climb, and then you would hit diagonal down. And you would chop the skyscraper until it fell, and then that would hurt your enemies as well as punching them. And it was just... And
you would grab people from the buildings.
And you would eat them, right? And that would give you health.
Yeah, you would.
When you ate the humans, dude.
Yeah. And then you would smack down helicopters.
Oh, yes, helicopters would come, and you only had three directions of punch. You had straight up, straight to the side, and then the diagonal down to chop the building.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, those... Yeah, I would absolutely love to see that. Steele says, did you guys talk about the new Battlefield game clip? Negative. I saw it. It was some shooting in a clip. Like, I need to see way more of that before I jump into it.
The same thing if we get a new Godzilla King of Monsters fighting game as well. That would have to have...
That'd be cool.
Destructible environments, too.
Destructible environments, I think, are... I know devs would love to do it, but there's a lot of play testing, right? Like, what if the enemy, or what if you break everything around you? You can't see anything. Now it's harder. You know, the enemy can still see.
And also, if there's debris, that players don't get stuck on the debris.
Oh, dude, Yeah.
Please.
That's a shitter. And the one of the only ways they do it is clipping. They either turn clipping off or they have it evaporate, and suddenly you're on a flat plane and there was a building there, and you're like, well, then why did we even destroy it in the first place? Now it's just an empty spot.
That's been one of my main gripes with Dynasty Warriors Origins, because it has this. I mean, what really amazed me about that game visually was you basically do not notice. I did not notice any pop-in. And in a game that renders so many models, and even where you can even see them in the distance, the armies and the banners in the wind and whatnot, that's incredible. But when you defeat an officer in that game, all the soldiers connected to that officer just sort of fade out of existence.
Oh, they're ads almost, but they're ads that die when he dies, basically?
Yeah. And they basically kind of just slowly despawn and fade away they're figments of your imagination or something.
Okay, which is worse? Which is worse? Because Johnny and I have very particular experience in Remnant of ads
and
killing us.
It's just weird that they don't just run off and then run out of the arena or something.
Oh, and which is worse?
But they just fade away. Yeah.
Do you like that? Would you rather have them fade away or run away, or would you rather
much rather they run away?
I mean, or would you rather have them stay and you have to defeat every ad that a boss or somebody has spawned?
No, I'm fine with them running away because our commander got killed. We need to get out of here.
Right.
That's fine. Like they're routing.
Yeah, we played games where you finish that boss and you're like, ta-da, and then the one ad, you look over and you just see this fucking cat-looking thing with its legs forward, and you're like, fuck, and it kills you, and you're like, are you? But then at the same time, I will sit here with you guys and take the piss out of a game when I kill the boss and all the bad guys die instantly, and you're like, what the fuck? Was everybody connected by some kind of spiritual naval cord?
A psychic connection.
Yeah, psychic connection. They're like, oh my god, Master died. But I guess you can't win on that. Yeah, I like the idea of them running away, skittering off. You know, that kind of thing that would be sort of a cool bit of form and function and fiction all sort of merging together. Jeff says, this is a good one, man. He says, shooting at non-red barrels in games and it exploding kind of makes my brain go, that's not supposed to happen. That's so true, man. When you shoot something that it doesn't look like it's supposed to, and it's so funny because when you see the red barrels, man, I am motor set. If I go into a room and there's more than one or two red barrels, I'm like, bad guy. Something big's happening. It's not just going to be a couple bad guys. There's like something's going on here. Is the barrel on a corner? Where's the barrel? Oh, the barrel's over here. Bad guy's definitely coming from that side because they want me to at least get some of them with that first shot. And you go into a level and that happens so often. It's almost, I wish I could turn my brain off, but you'll go into a spot and you'll be looking around going, red barrel, red barrel, red barrel. There's going to be a bad guy up there. And then you're already aiming up there. It's just sort of unfair to the bad guy sometimes. I hadn't thought about the idea of shooting a non-red barrel, though, and being like, if it explodes, going, whoa, wait, what? That wasn't TNT. What the fuck was in that? Let's see. What other ones do we got? I asked everybody for best explosives. Plague Soul says Blast Corpse on N64. Shit. That's an ancient one, man. I only played a couple hours of that's before both of your guys' times, right? Well, maybe not no, even Silver. N64 Blast Corps. Did you ever play that?
I did not.
Yeah, I think that would have been before your time even.
No, it was. I just never. It wasn't.
Yeah, I didn't have a Nintendo 64.
I had a Nintendo 64.
Did you?
But that game did not pop up for me.
And it probably, I don't know if you would have even liked it. So I mean, I don't know if I didn't even really like it that much, but it did have some cool destructibility. Max Payne 3 does that. Max Payne 3 does explosions for no reason? Is that what you're saying? And then Warpig says, hell yeah, I rented it. Which game did you rent? Steel Fax says the gravity gun from Half-Life 2. Gravity gun from Half-Life 2 is pretty good. Just keep waiting for Half-Life 3, guys. It'll happen. I feel like Half-Life 3 we're going to be really old. It was all about destruction, Plague says. Vapor says, I'm always upset when I shoot birds in a game and they don't die. Oh, you mean...
What kind of monsters out there shooting birds in games?
Yeah, I was like, what kind of monsters doing that? But I guess I definitely have shot at birds in almost every game. If there's a bird, I have to test it out. You know, you got to see. I don't, seek them out, but it's like the dogs in Division.
For science.
Yeah, and I remember Division 1, Division 2, whatever, when
Then
there's
there are the
animals, you gotta
games where
test
you
those
hear
out.
birdsong everywhere, but there are no
Oh my
birds.
god, dude! I'm pretty sure you and I have talked about this, but I'm pretty sure it was Tom Clancy's original games, the old ones.
Also, Starfield.
Starfield has bird sound.
Yeah, birdsong. Yeah.
Um,
On
so
some of the planets, no birds.
I think it was Rogue. It wasn't Rogue Spear. It might have even been prior to that, but there was one of the ones that had started sort of going out and about with your military operators, and there were all these bird sounds, and I spent hours looking for those birds and realized, oh, there's no birds at all, and I was just like furiously hunting for these birds. Let's see. Stelio says the propane tanks next to the enemies in Max Payne 3. Zero says RE4 accustomed me to shoot birds for loot. Resident Evil 4 gives you loot for shooting birds?
Yeah, they drop eggs. I think the chickens.
Man, I don't remember that at all.
I
Speaking of
think
chickens,
maybe the ravens drop something as well. I think, but I forget what.
speaking of chickens, last night I got to see it was Amudski playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I forgot about those fucking chickens and all of the wildlife. I don't know if he's got a glitch game or what, but that dude at some point was fighting like 6 Templars or whatever they're called in that game. They called Templars in that one, the main assassins.
No, they're
Odyssey.
not Templars. They're they're mercenaries.
Mercenaries. And they all had animals, and then chickens were everywhere, and I was just like, Jesus Christ! It was just, I had forgot how much anarchy is in that game. That was the game you and I were joking about on the podcast when it came out about the chickens always killing people. Wasn't that the one, Silver? Wasn't it Odyssey? There's a game that you and I joked, I think
and the fight I had a screenshot in Odyssey. I don't know if from Odyssey. I don't know if you remember of me standing surrounded by like 30 or 40 lynx corpses.
Yeah.
Because I had like 30 or 40 lynxes jump me on top of a mountain. Like it was just a never-ending fight. They just kept spawning in.
I forgot all about that shit, man. That's great. That's great. He had
at the end, and when it finally stopped, there was like a mountain of them, or like a pile of them.
Hey, you got a lot of resources from it. Solar says, I feel the same way with any animals in games. Powder Cake said Ratchet and Clank had a skill point for shooting birds. Or a skill. Oh, okay. Wizard says, I spent hours shooting birds in RDR2. I did too, and for some reason that one, it's not that it bothers me, but 2 set them up. 2, it's like you practice, in 1 even shooting birds just seems like it's a part of the Western lifestyle, that there's a bunch of moving shit. Let's shoot as much as we can. Like there's something about the old West that feels sort of a part of it. Toggle says try attacking the chicken in Zelda. Yeah, that got brought up in our chat yesterday. There were a bunch of us in there, and he was playing Odyssey, and we were just laughing, going, yeah, definitely the Zelda was probably the toughest chickens. Amudski says, I have a punchable face, I think. Those AC games hate me. I am personally saying I think you've got a glitch save, because I have fought many of the mercenaries at one time, but many meaning 3 or 4. The time I was watching Amudski, there were a shit ton, and they all had animals. And I think he told me one time he beat like 8 or 9 in a row, but last night he was going up in level. Like, I just don't think I've seen. Now, there's been adjustments to the difficulty in most of the Assassin's Creeds once they get released, and they make them like different ways in which it does a scaling. So I don't know if that's what I'm watching, but he killed like at minimum 10 of those guys. And so, when you go in and look at the mercenary readout in Assassin's, it's like just fucking dead, even though he's low level, which admittedly I find pretty tough because they're pretty spammy. I think the mercenaries,
the problem was that when you engaged 1 or 2 mercenaries, there was a very high chance of a third either just roaming the area, finding you, and then joining the fight, or more just coming. Right? I don't know if they get word of it or what happens, but there's a dynamic where they just keep coming.
I have noticed Amudski runs around a lot, and I think he's kiting the system, as in the AI
if you're
system
kiting them into like the area of, and they roam a lot, and they will see you and join the fight.
Shit's hilarious
all the time.
Sorry, want to make sure I get all these Twitter. There's another one. So thank you, Michael. That went on for like 40 minutes. PK says, considering we're all gamers of a certain age, old enough to remember playing, for example, OG Bioware games, how are you feeling regarding the impending, or seemingly impending death of current BioWare? Any sympathy at all? Yeah, I mean, I don't want people to lose their job. That's for like I'm not one of those type of people that if a company delivers a bunch of bad games, even, that I'm like, oh my god, they must be destroyed. I'm like, whatever. I feel like the BioWare Silver might not have been here, but might have been last week. It might have been 2 weeks ago. But it is weird that I'd said the BioWare that isn't the BioWare that isn't is now the BioWare that isn't. Like, it's changed that many times where you can't even say this new BioWare is a different BioWare. You can go 3 or 4 back now.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also been 25 years.
Exactly. Shit. I mean, dude,
frankly, more than that. It's been 28.
Yeah. What was the first one I played of them?
That would be their first one was Baldur's Gate.
Baldur's Gate 1, right? Yeah. Yeah. And dude, what, 1, and then was it 1 that was on 4? It was one of them that was on like 4 or 5 discs, and like back in the day when, you know, you were installing giant boxes worth of these. I don't feel any sympathy, but I don't feel any desire. I mean, I don't feel sympathy in the way that I'm not going to sit up and worry about everybody's life, because that would be destructive. But it sucks balls that they can't figure it out, because I do like Western RPGs a slight bit more than JRPGs in the way they're structured and they're put together, their gameplay. I have a tendency to go more towards Western. I guess Witcher's not Western, but you could say that style.
It is. It is very much a Western RPG.
I just didn't know if you consider that.
You could say that, you know, the people will land, even if the studio dissolves or whatever, the people will land on different jobs, different studios, and they will go on to do things, we hope. But there is something to be said about the identity of the studio, the types of games they like doing. And if you like that type of games, guess what? It is nice to have that, you know, cohesive unit that's trying to make those games.
Yep.
Whether it's the same people, it's not. Like you say, it's 3 times over a different generation.
Yeah.
But still, there's something about BioWare as a mission statement. They're trying to make these types of games.
It's a good way of saying it.
Right?
It's a good way of saying it. Yep. Yep. They always, even if they don't hit it, when what they're aiming for appeals to me more, even if they haven't hit it. It's almost like that person who's just really not good at shooting, and maybe they're too old, but they had some skill, and you hope they get one more good fight. The Chuck Liddell of, you know, at one point they were knocking people out, and you're like, I just want one more. Let's watch Tyson fight one more time, kind of thing. And but it's not the same Tyson. It's not the same BioWare, and it sucks. Those guys, I don't care what anybody says, man. The doctors in particular, those people who put together BioWare had a different thought process than developers at the time, and they came in with different empathies, and it got into the games. Like, you could, when you played their games, you're like, whoa, whatever they're bringing in emotion-wise, what they're trying to nail is different, and it worked out for, what, a decade and a half, 2 decades maybe, a decade and a half? I don't know. I can't remember what their last unanimously good game was. Okay, I would say despite the ending, Mass Effect 3, despite the ending. Is that not right?
I mean, where you lose me is unanimously good, because
you know what I mean.
A lot of people don't. Yeah,
I'm saying,
but I would say I mean, because I love Mass Effect 3, frankly.
Exactly, but I think Andromeda
for me it was the best
Mass
Effect, but
okay, there you go. And I think Andromeda was, regardless, I think
for sure
was like
yeah. I mean, I think Mass Effect 3 is probably their last high watermark, if we can put it like that, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, what's weird is I even saw some stuff in Andromeda where you could see there were still people there trying to put the pieces together.
Right.
There were still some pieces that you were like, okay, I see what the I'm following your plot of
and
ideas.
the combat. I mean, the combat could be fun in Andromeda at times.
It could. Yeah, it could. It was not universally like the worst thing ever. You know, it was there was definitely things in it that they tried.
There were just elements where the execution faltered.
Yeah. So no, I mean, sympathy for everybody. It absolutely sucks to lose a job, but I would also say, not sympathy, but worry that my genre doesn't have a representative currently that I can aim at. So mine's
Yeah.
not sympathy as much as like, you know, where do I go for that thing I'm looking for? Stephen East says DLSS, frame gen, etc. I wondered what's your take on them?
Oh, doesn't Larian do that? Kinda.
Okay, so this is such a hot take, dude. No, because they do in some places, but turn-based doesn't appeal to me as much as action.
Right.
And the real-time combat,
like real-time pause. Yeah.
Real-time pause. Right. I also no. I think that would be an entire podcast to talk about, because while I really think Baldur's Gate 3 is really good, and you know me, Divine Divinity was like beyond my jam. They've also had ones that I really am not. I'm not as big of a fan at all of the Divinity.
Yeah,
what are they called?
Original Sin.
Original Sin. Yeah,
I'm nowhere near as high as I do like them, but okay. I'm not.
I like to.
They also have
Dragon
Commander or whatever.
Very different games.
What was it called? Divinity Dragon Commander. Dragon Commander.
Yeah,
it was like
the RTS RPG sort of hybrid weird thing they did. Yeah.
I'll just go this far. Divine Divinity to me was premier for me. I was like, oh my god! And from there on, even if they were really good, they never hit that magic. Even Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know what it is about Divine Divinity though. That could be a timing thing. You know, that could just be timing. But I would agree. I'll say I get where you're coming from, and I can take it back.
It wasn't saying that they are that. It was just asking if they were that for you,
me.
Because I'm not quite as enamored with Baldur's Gate 3 as a lot of people are either.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique one.
They are the ones that are held up as the current sort of standard bearer of the Western RPG. I would say them and probably Owlcat Games.
Owlcat Games, dude. If Owlcat Games could hire some QA, I'm telling you straight up, Silver. I think Owlcat Games has it in the story. The Owlcat Games is this fucking close, man. They're that close to having insane success, and this close feels like that fucking far, because those guys' QA has never got better. So their QA is basically the equivalent of the other game we said had not got better after 15, the Earth Defense Force. It's like that's their equivalent. Their QA has never got better, and if it did,
their games have always been broken at launch.
They've been broken. Imagine if they could, because their stories, man, like they take time on their like you can tell they're whatever world they're diving into, whether it be Warhammer or their own thing, Pathfinder, they know what they're doing. Like
the reason their games are broken is because they're incredibly complicated systems wise.
Insanely complicated. Yeah.
There's a lot of parts that can break.
Yeah. Wizard of Smoke, $5 says, speaking of chickens, here's $5 towards your next dozen of eggs. Is anyone interested in Atomfall? Luckily enough, eggs aren't super expensive here, so $5 would get me a dozen of eggs.
You're not getting hit by the.
We've had some issues with the diseases that have happened, but those were prior to even the presidential stuff. People thought that was connected, but for us, the avian flu raised it a little bit, but we haven't been hit as bad as everybody else. We're going to. It's just, waiting. And I don't eat a ton of eggs anyway, but I did check it when we were all on Discord. Somebody said how expensive they are, and I think at the time I checked, it was $3.99 still, where like some places I've heard it's like $12.99, which is, I ain't buying no eggs for $12.99, dude.
For some eggs, dude.
I'll get a chicken and I'll just have it in my backyard laying them, like at that point.
And also, like if you live, certainly here, if you live in a rural area, you can, there are a lot of farmers who sell pretty much outside of their home, or like a mailbox they have
eggs right there.
They put them out. Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
For really really cheap.
Yeah. We have neighbors who have chickens too, but like, I just don't eat them enough to really care too much as we turn into chickens. He also asked, is anybody interested in Atomfall? Warpig and I think it was Warpig and I talked about this last night. I believe that Atomfall, if it gets even somewhat close to what they're attempting, has a chance to be one of the breakout, like, huge surprises. That is not a joke. It's what I've heard. There have been multiple people I've talked to that in some way have played it, and I'm not a part of that, but they seem to be quite happy with it. I'm crossing my fingers. I think Atomfall looks awesome. And from what I'm hearing, I won't say is, but seems like it is. Seems like a lot of people are saying that it's looking good. So Stephen East, he says DLSS, frame gen, etc. I wanted your take on them. For me, I switch them off. I find them as more smoke and mirrors, and the issues I've had with them don't pay off. I just wish native performance was better. I don't love them as a replacement just for performance, but I consider them the same as any other optimization as we move forward that has its negatives now. I think DLSS, frame gen, FSR, upscaling, we're already seeing situations like Cyberpunk with the new DLSS 4 that is just stunning. That kind of stuff is going to get better, which is what I want. I'm not saying we should just stop improving, but I like those ideas. And then it lets people with lesser systems play games, but in no way, shape, or form is that an excuse for unoptimized games. If a game is unoptimized, it's just unoptimized. I will say that the lazy dev thing is usually not real. Like a lot of these dev, it's so funny because we live in an industry, guys, where we bitch when somebody has overtime and we bitch when we say they didn't spend enough time. And you're like,
True.
At some point, time is money. And you have a start date and an end date, and it's like, this is what we could do. The only thing I would say that does infuriate me is when a game will be like, we're going to put ray tracing in, which is a known FPS killer. And sometimes it feels like they just want to deliver that, and you get these, shit FPSs there, and you're like, I feel like ray tracing is not a lie, because I've seen it look good in some games. I feel like ray tracing was sold to us a full gen early. Like, ray tracing shouldn't even have been in the 40 series. Just be like, okay, that'll be now, because it's been so problematic in so many ways.
Yeah, I think it's a big bait. And very often,
often.
It doesn't work properly too. Like day one, very often you will see issues, artifacts. Like for me, when I played Indiana, when I had the RTX on, he looked blonde. I think I told you he literally
you did
looked
tell
like
me,
he had yellow hair, yellow like Super Saiyan hair.
Right.
And then for a while, I was trying to figure out why it was weird, and then turned off RTX, looked great. So
I've told you,
an example.
I like devs who author for non-RTX, and then you add RTX if you want, but author for non. That's why I think Control in particular, without it, looks pretty good. And a lot of games do look I think Indie looks good with whatever low-level RTX that they sort of have baked in.
Yeah, but Cyberpunk too.
Cyberpunk looks fine without RTS. Does RTS add reflections? Of course it does. But there are ways to make games still look good without it. We've seen
not your own damn reflection. Doesn't add that.
No, it doesn't add that.
I'm still angry.
Still angry. You can't see yourself all the time. I want to see my junk swinging in the wind if I'm naked. That's all I'm saying.
So it does when you walk up to the mirror and activate it.
Oh, dude,
you have to activate it. It pisses me off. It takes ages to activate.
Yeah, exactly. As they load in your junk loading. Dude, please stand by. Bigger junk takes longer. It's like, hang on.
The entire world
Go ahead.
Is a reflective surface. The entire world. And yet, I can't see myself reflected on anything as I walk by.
And here's the thing. Most of us are ugly or in some way don't consider ourselves like Brad Pitt. So I don't even know if I want to see my character. But I would like to have the choice. I want to see him and go, okay, I can turn off reflections. But the
see
fact
yourself
is that
in
they're
the world.
See yourself in the world. Yeah. Spider-Man did it great. I don't, I know people have issues
especially
with Spider-Man
because
1 and 2. I thought they were
you
great.
have the whole first-person actor thing where you can see your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. Yeah, so it's even more disconcerting that like you're a ghost and everybody you're all, dude, I'm not reflecting. A vampire cyborg? Because that's sort of cool.
Plot twist.
The plot twist at the very end, they're like, dude.
If you were like the standard floating video game camera in first person, then maybe, yeah.
I think with ray tracing, in particular, that's an issue. I think that RTX, all those kind of things. If anybody wants to study this, you can see. I believe even Star Wars Force Unleashed was trying to do something which they did not do. I believe it was the second game. They were looking at some interpolation that they were trying in engine to get a higher FPS. I believe we already started to see weird shit that was going on with Quantum Break. There were people doing this prior. And there's various reasons why you want to try to do it. I like the idea of it, but yeah, of course, you want it to be native because, dude, that way you don't have to have a hardware that only does a particular thing. Ray tracing, to me, out of out of anything seems to be a scam. I don't necessarily think DLSS or frame gen is a scam as much as it is early gen. Joggle the Toggle, who's in here, says, with Dragon Age Veilguard not performing up to EA standards, what are your thoughts on CEO's comments on Dragon Age needing live service elements, especially when they seemingly steered away from that model?
They were garbage. Dragon Age didn't fail because it was not a live service game.
Yeah, dude.
It was the attempts to make it into a live service game that forced them to reboot,
which forced them to lose money.
Yeah.
Which forced them to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I also think it's funny because,
at least I think that's more likely.
Well, dude, not only is it more likely, there's a difference between underperforming and reviewing well and not selling well. And
oh yeah,
underperforming could mean with MTX you would perform. You know, if you have MTX, you get some money on the side. They didn't do it. There's live service elements in that game though that you can definitely tell. Or some of the you'll look at all the armor and go, why do I have all this stuff? Like some of it felt like little precursors from where they had gone at one point and left in, which I was fine with. I just think that's not the reason. I think there's multiple reasons for all of these. By the way, this is the same thing, Silver, that blows me away. It was Concord. Somebody said something like, Concord proves that gamers are tired of whichever service games or whatever. And then Marvel Rivals comes out. And I'm like, listen,
right.
I get that they're not identical. One charged you, which I think was a huge misstep on Concord. But it's like none of these prove anything at all. They just prove that good games have a better chance of selling. I think that's pretty fair. Bad game can still sell well. We've seen that. But it's like a good game that does well has a better chance of selling. But there's nothing. How many times have you and I sat here and been told RTS is dead? I mean, or not here, but sat and you sit and you hear somebody say RTS is dead. And then half a decade later, there's 85 huge RTS games. And you're like, really? It's not dead. It's just at that time.
But at the moment, Helldivers 2 releases, and every article is, this is live service done right. This is how every live service game should be done from now on.
By the same writers, who less than 6 months later were saying that it proves that we're, God damn, man. It's so fucking ridiculous. It's
the constant whiplash reactionary.
Yeah. And it also
headline-driven stuff.
It also pisses me off because it defines us as sort of idiots. Gamers as idiots. It's like, oh, we're going to tell you what you like. We're going to run in front of wherever you're running so we can lead you. It's like, just shut the fuck up. That has nothing to do with nothing. There's also casual games. If we believed those numbers, all gamers were mobile gamers. That's the numbers you could take from that's fucking ridiculous. So like, why are we not saying that? And these kind of over-the-top reactions, whether it be ourselves, whether it be streamers, whether it be YouTube, or not you, I already said ourselves, whether it be journalists, that overreaction kind of shit of like, this is the end of, I saw this recently. Somebody said, this is the end of AAA big games. And I'm all, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Not only is it not the end, they're just going to try to figure out a way to rejigger it, and you'll get smaller companies. By the way, I know of one. It's got a AA, and they're looking at doing like their first huge, big budget AAA. Do you know why? Because there's hope and belief that they can deliver a good one. And that is what I want. I don't want people losing hope and saying this entire genre is dead. That's ridiculous. Like that would be like saying that we should just stop making superhero movies, even though I don't like them. Continue to make them. If they're good, we'll jump in and play them. It's just a really odd thought process, man. It's broken. Toggle says, makes me wonder if there are any single-player games with tacked on live service that have been successful. Yeah, I would say Mass Effects. Wouldn't you guys think that? I think Mass Effect and Dragon Age Inquisition's multiplayer felt.
Mass Effect 3 multiplayers for sure. I don't think Dragon Age's multiplayer was all that successful. That wasn't my impression, at least.
Oh, true. Okay,
I never really heard anyone talk about it.
What about this? Assassin's Creed. Brotherhood's multiplayer was sort of just a thing on the side. I think it was Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. I think that one, I mean,
yeah, but there wasn't any monetized content or anything in that.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
It was just a standard sort of multiplayer mode implementation.
Space Marine 2, Pano says. Space Marine 2, you mean, I feel like Space Marine 2 wasn't tacked on, though.
Yeah, it's not tacked on.
Yeah, I don't think that one's tacked on as much as just not the full thing. Thymo says, have you guys seen Severance? Some of the best TV of the past years. Big recommend. Johnny
I
was
just
watching.
mentioned it to you, right? Yesterday. I started watching it. It is a cool, thought-provoking show and premise with good acting, but be prepared for a pretty slow pace. Pretty slow at times. Especially after, I would say, the initial episode or two.
So-
it definitely goes into a...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you're getting to the point to where why you heard me hedging when
Yeah,
you,
I got past... Yeah.
because you came in and you were talking it up, and I know
I
you
was
noticed
honeymoon
I got
phase,
I
like,
know you
dude.
noticed I got quiet, and I was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a show, but it's an Apple show, and Apple
Yeah.
fucking tells stories as glacially as humanly possible. Like their
And I don't
shows-
know how, but it's so consistent.
It is.
Almost every show, Foundation.
Yes,
That
you got to
other
give them a
alien
bit
show.
of. Yeah, the other alien one is like, I think it's called Invasion, but dude,
It's Invasion. Yeah,
you
yeah.
just got to sort of pat them on the back and
Have
be
you guys
like,
watched
really
Slow
good at
Horses? If you're watching Apple
Not
TV?
yet.
"Oh, what's
But
it
I'm
called?
assuming it's slow too.
Slow Horses.
Slow horses." Is it fit the name? Is it slow too, or is it like?
I don't know. I haven't
Oh,
watched
okay.
it, but I've
Okay.
heard a lot of people rave about it. It's with Gary Oldman.
Yes. Gary
Oh,
Oldman.
oh,
yeah.
that's the one, dude. You know me. I'm a
the
Gary
spy
Oldman
show.
fan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Silo, Pano. I agree. Silo is
Kind of a
Mm.
slow.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy kind of thing.
I'll
Hmm.
probably watch it because I love that guy. Like him and Tim Roth are two of my favorite actors of all time. So I'll definitely check
Mm.
it out.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then Rich Evans says, which of the Batman Arkham games is your favorite? Arkham Origins has a great atmosphere, and you nailed mine. Arkham Origins is great. We have some Batman pseudo news too to talk about in a second. But if you guys like the Batman games, is there one in particular? And like,
Probably Asylum.
really the very first, just because of why? Like what grabbed you?
The setting, the story, I felt it had the most focus.
True. That's fair.
I think it had the best execution. Like I struggled to come up with like any significant issues I had with that game.
Mhm. What about
yeah.
you, Johnny?
Yeah, that's fair. I liked Arkham Knight quite a lot, despite the issues. That game, if you guys remember, I think it got refunded to a lot of people because it had tons of issues. I had a huge memory leak on it. But the game itself, I really enjoyed. I loved the aesthetic of it. I thought it looked incredible. And it fixed a lot of problems that City had that I thought.
I think Knight might have been the first one I was told I was bought off, if I remember right. Because it had some performance issues, but at the
Yeah.
time I just got a new
Definitely.
card and I was at the top end of like the card list, and I didn't know
Right.
I didn't do a good enough job, I guess, explaining like where performance was with the lower cards. That's something you should do. But I liked Arkham Knight. Maybe not the best because I still like Origins the best, but I actually liked a lot of it. Had some shit. I know people have a problem with the tank, which
I didn't like the Batmobile.
There we
in
go.
that game.
And it comes up quick. Like I didn't even get it all the way out. I like there's always going to be somebody who's like,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
and I do understand that, but I liked Knight. I liked the story. The twist is like not a, it's a twist if you think, I guess. But I liked the
Yeah.
other characters that popped up. I was learning about Batman at the time more than I had known prior, which I sort of liked. There was just something about that. But it was long in the tooth. I guess by the time we got done with Arkham Knight, you were like, okay,
Yeah.
it's probably good to wrap this one up and maybe try to rejigger some things before we get a new one. Which, by
What
the
did
way,
you think about Origins? Just before we move on.
No,
What do you
that's my
think about
favorite.
Origins?
That's my favorite.
What was it about it that really spoke to you?
Listen,
like the city, or
no, it's because it's the origin, and it's him as a detective a tiny bit more at the starting instead of just
Yeah.
beating the shit out of people. And there was something about like, listen, I love to cripple and put people in comas. That's the best thing about Batman, right? You're like, I'm a good guy. Whoop, fucking neck breaker, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's dead. I love that. But in that first one, there's a little bit of a twist. You're trying to find out, bad guys die so that other bad guys can rise up to be the bad guys in the other games. There's just something about Origins that fucking is, to me, primo in the idea of still telling the same story, but doing a pretty good job with changing things up, even though it's a prequel and all that kind of stuff. In fact, if you really ask me, because I played all of them, and then I waited about 4 years and I replayed all of them again in a row chronologically. And I feel like I get where Silver's coming from, but I feel like Arkham was the only one I had a slight difficulty getting through because it felt
Right.
like it was contained. So its strength, contained, focus, stories is narrower, and it should be, and it nailed that. I felt like I wanted to get outside all the time. I was like constantly, there was something where I was like, oh my fucking God, can I do more? I almost felt claustrophobic in Arkham, which maybe that's on purpose. Maybe even now if they made it.
Yeah, because you're supposed to sort of be trapped in the asylum with the inmates to an extent, I think.
Yeah, so I liked that. So I was going to bring up some news. There are more rumors. I don't know if you guys saw. There was I think it was Forbes stated that Wonder Woman's been restarted.
Oh, no, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, so that one is gone for a while, and it sounds like now is restarted. So who knows when that'll come out. That is rough. But there were also rumors that came up that Rocksteady is doing another Batman game. And that popped up in the news right before we started in here. Like a true
single player Batman centric.
Yeah, that is the rumor. And I'm saying rumor now because it is just literally a rumor. But I wanted to hit on that. What would you guys want to see? Would you guys want to see them ignore Gotham? Was it Suicide Squad? Would you guys want them to just ignore all the fiction there, ignore whatever, and like be Batman?
I mean, certainly Gotham Knights, where Bruce dies, right?
Yeah. Well,
right.
Well, Suicide Squad, he doesn't.
Yeah, it's all of those are like alt.
Yeah.
Alt stories.
Sorry, I'm hearing somebody screaming for their life outside.
I am not familiar with the Suicide Squad story.
Another delivery man fell into one of your traps
into my traps. I've got I've got like welcome signs, but at the same time I've got fucking traps set up and I'm just waiting. Like what? That's a good idea.
I mean, the dogs need to eat, so yeah.
They gotta eat. So what would you guys want to see then? Where do we go? Where do you go with? If you're in charge, where do you go with Batman? You have to do Batman. Let's say he's going to be the primary character. I think they've decided that it only makes sense to just go back to what worked. What do you do? So you sell it elsewhere?
At that point, I think you really need to do some kind of reboot.
A reboot.
Yeah.
So a full
I would love to bring it down to basics and be like, hey, you're starting out as Batman. You're still figuring stuff out. You don't have all the tools yet. You're learning how to fight people properly and stuff. You know, just kind of take it back to basics and full Batman centric, maybe a bit more around Bruce as well.
I agree with you on the other stuff is somewhat mimicked in Origins, which is why I liked Origins, the starting out, learning the tools. But I love the idea of I don't know how you would do this, dude. I don't even know how you do it. Maybe Hogwarts style, where you not a school, but like trying to figure out 2 lives for people. But Bruce would be. It would be. To
be honest, I'm not sure I would want it to be an open world game, even.
Good point.
Oh damn! What would you? What form would you want it to be in? Are you saying open world even as much as Arkham?
Yeah.
So less than Arkham. So what form would you level? Almost like linear. You go to a place and you do.
Kind of. I mean, where maybe you choose missions from the Bat Lair and you go out and deploy to those. Yeah, that
could be cool. I mean, I hadn't thought about it. It's definitely might be
and have missions where you just investigate and stuff. And don't necessarily aren't combat based necessarily. Like some kind of a mix between like the Batman of Telltale. Right, and then some action stuff.
I'll go out on a ledge though and say what I think we're gonna get, especially because of Warner Brothers' financial positions and their.
It's going to be an action game.
It's going to be, it will be some kind of Elseworlds or something. but it is just
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to it is going to be, if they're smart financially to try to get back in the to be able to experiment, they have to get back to a status quo, and it sounds like they're really not there. I just feel like we're going to see what looks like Batman World's Origin Arkham Knight, but new in some way, and they're just going to be like, dude, let's nail it once, tell a side story, or like you guys said, a reboot, or an Elseworlds kind of thing where, you know, deceased, where
Yeah.
it's zombies. No, please don't do that.
Yeah,
But
it would be cool if, as you progress, you're working with Lucius and stuff, and like getting new tools, and
Mhm.
maybe that almost Metroidvania, where you get a new tool and now it opens up some new part of the map or whatever that you can go to.
Batman roguelike.
oh my god.
Oh God!
Don't do
Oh.
that to me. Dark Souls Batman. Hey, Johnny, do me a favor and open up Discord and read the questions. If I switch away from this view, this is one of the things with Discord. It'll switch the camera off. It'll switch
Ooh.
to the other
Yeah.
view.
Okay. No problem. Okay, so we got the thread. First question here from Real Bug. What are things
Continue.
you will put up with from small devs but not large devs? What things will you not tolerate even from small studios? Do you have an opinion on how much small devs who may not have strong game design beliefs yet should listen to their community? Can't too much be a mistake? I just got here, so if you answer this question once a quarter, you can pass. I don't think we do that often. So,
No.
Silver, why don't you jump
Definitely
in
not once a
here?
quarter.
Do you have, I guess we do have different standards for small devs, large devs. How do you
for
view
sure.
that?
I mean, I think there's certainly a different set of expectations, right? From a large AAA studio, a large AAA game to what a smaller indie dev can deliver. Certainly in terms of like QA capability and whatnot.
Yes.
So I think there is definitely more leeway for bugs and stuff from a smaller developer. But that being said, there's certainly a threshold. Like save bugs, for instance, pretty much no go. For
Yeah.
regardless of the size of your development team,
stuff like that,
corruption
yeah.
issues, anything that's game breaking, also not more of a deal breaker for smaller studios. But like smaller stability issues, may even like performance issues to some extent. I think though there are greater allowances for that with smaller studios than there are for larger ones, for sure.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting. I kind of expect more bugs from AAA games than smaller games. If
I
I'm
understand.
playing Ori in a way, because it's a more focused project, right? It's a smaller scope,
Right.
so it's also
Yes, I
easier
understand.
to make it much more
there are less
polished.
variables there. Yeah.
Less variables. So
Often.
if I'm playing
Yeah.
Ori and the Blind Forest, I pretty much expect it to work all the way through. I would be surprised if like I run into a significant bug. But if I'm playing, you know, you name it, Far Cry or, you know,
I mean,
open
again,
world games.
I mean, again, like you're touching on, it depends on the game. So if I'm playing an
Depends on the
Owlcat game and a game from Owlcat Games, right?
Yes.
I have a certain set of expectations ahead of launch of what that's going to look like. And so when I get the finished product, that's going to be according to those set according or held up against those expectations, right? And so if the game is broken on release, that's pretty much going to be what I expect. So there's going to be a certain allowance for that where I'm probably not going to get the game at release, or I'm going to wait, or whatever.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Is there anything specific that you don't tolerate even from small studios?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, save game errors and corruption errors,
that's
for
like
sure.
Hard stops.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also a lack of checkpoints is really aggravating. Because sometimes I'll play an indie game and I'll see, oh, they didn't program either the ability for me to save or get checkpoints in big chunks.
Right.
And now I have to repeat this annoying section. And that to me is almost like I'm stopping. I'm dropping the game at that point.
Yeah, masochistically enough, that's not a deal breaker for me because I'm used to trial and error stuff.
You persevere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another part of the question. Sorry, go on, Karak.
I mean, I guess I just don't trust anybody who says they have this many people or this many people working on games, and I don't really believe. As a person, I might support something that's smaller because it's smaller, but as somebody who plays games normally, not as a reviewer, I usually go on the cost. I don't care how many made the game. So
yeah, that's fair.
And I guess I just don't trust.
You're not going to know that as a consumer going
exactly. And we saw a lot
of
we saw enough lies and social signaling that occurred around the Ascent that the Ascent devs were nice enough to point out that it was incorrect. You had people saying, "Oh, this is an indie game," blah blah blah. Like, what are you talking about? We have a bunch of contractors. Like, don't lie because it'll make it worse if it appears as if we let those lies continue. That was to me a stand-up thing to say, no, that's actually incorrect. I look at the money that I'm putting out because it's my money. And I just don't trust whenever I see 5, 10, 15. I've run a Kickstarter. I know that when somebody says they're an indie dev, sometimes they are. Sometimes you find out they've got 6,000 people helping them. They're using companies. So to me, the money is the only thing I can take tangibly and say, this is it. And then I agree with what you both said, the scope of something. I don't really consider AAA, AA, indie as being more or less problematic. I see them as more or less scope creep. And then these big scopes, a Shadow of a Doubt is a great example of a game that is fairly small dev, but a massive scope when you look at what they were trying to do, and buggy as shit. Owlcat, it's not massive in scope, it's massive in complexity and skills and all the shit you can do. And therefore, I mean, honestly, just being honest, I think I think all the buggiest games or in the top 10 are Owlcat games. I mean, that I've played. I mean, legitimately, I'm not talking about games that crashed, but games that ran but were hyper buggy. They're probably Owlcat games, and they are not considered AAA, and they are revoltingly buggy. So that's just the honest truth, man. I mean, and I like them, but I'm like, dude, seriously, this is in dire need of some assistance. So scope is a big deal. Scope is probably more. It's just it's really hard to know how many fucking people somebody hired.
Oh, and sometimes you'll hear, oh, it's an indie team. Like you said, I mean, Risk of Rain 2, they had like 3 or 5 main devs, but then they had literally hundreds of people working from Gearbox. Like, QA production. It's insane. You can't say it's a tiny team.
Yeah, I hate that kind of conversation unless we're here. If we're here and we're just talking,
if we know
about
what we mean by it,
that's one thing. What was the next question? Or the second part?
There was also the other. The second part was whether how much they should absorb feedback from the community.
Yes,
not at all. I'm just joking. Very little. I want the dev to deliver to me. I'm not a part of the game. Otherwise, motherfucker, I'm investing, and you need to pay me a wage. I don't let the developer do their shit and then deliver something to me. If it's free, that's slightly different. But if there's a cost involved, you make the shit. You deliver to me shit, I pay for your shit. I don't like the consistent, because I've seen devs change too much and adjust things I've liked because the overall status quo just didn't like something. It's not that they were like, oh, it's breaking. It's like, oh, we don't like this, so they change it. And then other people who are like, well, you could have lived with that. I'm living with your shit. It's almost like 10 people going in a house. You're all really happy to be asleep. Yeah, it might be hot for some people and cold for others, but you got a roof over your fucking head. But when it comes to game development, everybody's listening to everybody, and suddenly you have no fucking roof because somebody doesn't like shingles. And you're like, what the fuck? We're like, where are we with games right now? Kickstarter, totally different. Early access, different. But for the most part, I just don't. I want devs to do their thing. Deliver to me what you want. And
I think
that's me.
It also,
by the way, just me.
I think it also depends. Like the answer is the same again. I think where it depends on what
scope,
what the game is, and the scope, and what the developer wants to deliver with the game. If it's say a live service game, then you're entirely dependent on on the feedback of the community and incorporating that, right?
But
but if you're making like an artistic indie title, like say Ori or a game like Genesis Noir that is basically like Fantasia as a video game, kind of.
Right.
That has an artistic vision that kind of goes before the gameplay. Then you don't. I don't think. Then you don't take on the feedback of the community to that extent, because in those instances the focus isn't on the gameplay. The focus is on the experience that you want to convey and deliver to the user. Where for, say, a live service game, that experience isn't necessarily artistic so much as it is entertainment or delivery of fun and engagement, right?
Yep, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, some games rely so much on gameplay and like balance, and something can become unfun very easily. And stuff like that, like roguelites, Dead Cells, Hades, those games have become much better games for the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see where you're coming from, whereas, the devs should have a strong vision too, and they shouldn't just buckle on everything, right?
I mean, especially because, like Karak touches on, if you just adopt feedback, you end up getting pulled in 4 different directions, and you end up with, I mean, as a Simpsons reference, the Homer car, right?
Yep. Not only that, but... go ahead. Sorry. Oh.
No, and you end up just with this mangled mess that has no harmony to it at all, because it's just been pulled apart.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that, like, all of us have worked in groups with other people or whatever, and I mean, we would actually there were certain terms that we would use that indicated this is a meeting where we don't want other people in this meeting, because we knew my boss in particular was very open to everybody having a say. And you'd be like, can I ask why the HR person is in here when we're talking about documentation for a step-by-step, writing something down? Like,
not every feedback should be...
Not every feedback needs to be that. So I want to make it clear, because I always feel like we have to make stuff clear, which is, I know usually our watchers know that, but of course with a live service game, that to me is a live service game.
Yeah. So it's in the name.
It's in the name. So I'm not talking about those. That's a completely different thing. But I do think a live service game, the developer could have an idea and say, here's the idea, here's what you get.
For sure.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just, dude, we're getting to the point to where I feel like I really do like a lot of devs' ideas, and I hear about them, and then what you get, you're like, what am exactly, like, what am I playing here? And Silver hit it perfectly when he said that it, like, the cohesion goes away. Because if I'm telling you a story and you've sat with me for years, but I'm the one who made up the story, you will still not understand the interconnecting webs of how my brain got to different plot points. It's just not going to happen. And so when you have 10,000 people who are in the room and they're like, hey, but why can't we have, fucking Black Widow in our game, in a thong? And you're like, dude, why would we do that? Okay, well, the community wants it. There's some things that I don't think the community's smarter on, but there are some things that there's a cohesive expectation that should be listened to by developers. For example, keybinds. Can we just all agree that makes, if I'm using a keyboard and I can't keybind, you're like, the motherfucking thing's been around for 45 years. What do you mean I can't keybind?
Or I can only keybind to half of the keyboard.
Half of the keyboard. Yeah, and you're just like, dude, what the fuck? Like, we all use the same keyboard, right? Like, how did we not do that? Those kind of expectations should almost be a knowledge base that a developer can download. And they could.
Where's
really,
my FOV slider is...
Where's my FOV slider? Even though FOV slider affects performance, so I do know that some devs will be like, but I agree with you. There's certain things where you're like, here's your little knowledge base, and every developer should, like, open it, uncompress it with WinRAR, and it's like, these things are sort of your generic
and take it in
things.
Aggregate, right?
And then take it in aggregate.
A billion people are hating this particular thing in your game, that's probably, there's a nugget of truth there.
Yeah, there's a nugget of truth. And it could be that the game's not for a billion people. But I would
then maybe you either lean into that and you say, no, that's what the game is.
I like to think of the negative space. And the moment you said a billion people, do you know what I was thinking to myself? If a billion people don't like something, you did something right to get a billion people to look at something. if you got 1 billion people to fucking say they didn't like something, dude, somewhere something went right. Whether it's even bad PR.
Well, it's better than the indifference we see on so many games now.
It's absolutely better than indifference. I bet you there's a lot of devs who sort of wish there was a little bit of internal like drama or struggle.
Stronger
because
emotion.
There might be some people, stronger. Yeah. Go ahead. What was the next one?
Okay, that's it from Real Bug. Very good questions there. And then this one from Green Saturn. What's one game where the fiction and the gameplay come together to create something special? Mine would be Assassin's Creed 1, specifically the tutorial and how it was contextualized within the game's narrative. Good example.
Very good example. Very good example. In one, not the other ones, but in one. Yeah. Because once you repeat it, it becomes less whatever. But I would agree with that one. Okay, so fiction and function, that's a huge deal to me too. Go ahead.
Thief, the Dark Project.
Oh man, yeah.
That was the first game. With the steampunk city, like the whole hammers versus pagans, sort of religious undertones, just the entire vibe of that game, coupled with Stephen Russell's narration as Garrett, coupled with the gameplay of sneaking through all these sort of dark steampunk sort of locations, like that. Some of that level design still absolutely incredible. Some of the best ever made. That's a game that still endures in my memory.
What about you, Johnny?
I was thinking of Portal and the way how when you start the game and you don't know where you are, you're just trying to figure out where you are, and the process of learning what the portals do, and that being tied into you being a part of this experiment, and then like learning more as you go. I felt like learning how to use the portals fed directly into that narrative of like me being into this experiment.
Both those answers are better than mine, because I actually.
What do you got?
Well, I'm thinking. There's certain aspects of it that I liked. Prey 2016. When you find, the problem with Prey 2016 is there's a double story. It's like the first shock, which is very quick, and then the later thing, which is very not quick. It's like 8 or 10. Well, I don't know how long it's in the game. Depends on how you play, but 8 or 10 hours in. I felt that the different experiments that were going on mimicked some of the weapons, but this is also done in Control, weirdly enough. I feel like Control, the narrative that you're reading about and all that kind of stuff fits into what she's going through. The big problem with form and function going over the top of each other is that's almost just an immersive sim at some point for me. Like most immersive sims starts to feel in some way because they give you a thing and then it's very responsive to you.
They contextualize it.
Yeah, and some games don't, and I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, well, the games that don't have this. Like they're not good in this particular aspect. Maybe they are. They're not aiming for that. That's a hard question. That's actually like an entire podcast topic.
So
like,
is Kingdom Come a good example? Like the way they
starting it is
show you how to fight and
that's the problem with Prey. Both of those have strong startings, and then they have all these systems that for sure feel like that, but they don't sit there and say, well, okay, Kingdom Come does tell you. Kingdom Come does drop tutorials, where Prey isn't more, it's sort of like you pick it up. I think Prey might even be a better example of naturally picking it up. But dude, the starting of Kingdom Come 2 is it's pretty legit. When even as Silver said, it's not many. I think it's only like maybe 3 or 4 skills that you talk about, and then you talk about the hit. But I just love the Ultima, which is an old reference for a lot of people, but the Ultima RPG starting, where it's not all about, it is about numbers underlying it, but you're talking in the narrative, and you're like, yeah, I loved my dog and he helped me, and suddenly you have Houndmaster as a skill. And I was like, that's awesome. Is it hard to do? No, that's not. I mean, it's literally the same as you hitting plus, right? It's not that hard to fucking do, but it worked out great.
Fallout, some of the Fallout games kind of did that.
Absolutely
with some of the tests
correct
as well, right?
Oh, the test, dude. That's a good. What's that test called?
I forget it.
Right, like an aptitude test or
Yes,
something?
it's called
Yes.
it's got an acronym for it though.
Perception
Perception is the acronym for all the things, right? Or
Yeah.
Yeah,
is it
for the
perception?
stats or whatever.
Oh
yeah.
my god, I can't
think.
remember the name of that
Is
test.
it not
but that's-
aptitude? I'll look it up.
Could you look that up? Because if I go away from the screen, it'll. Dude, that's a really good point. Fallout starting is a great. That is really good. That might. Maybe I should have chosen that as my example. That's a better example. God damn, that's a good question though.
It's a special loadout.
Special.
So
It's special.
that was
Strength,
the acronym.
perception, blah blah blah. Yep. It's special. Yeah, that's awesome. I hadn't even thought about that. That's a great. I love it because it's so. This is the kind of stuff that fucking stokes me out too. This is gonna sound dumb, but when I go into the HUD and it says special, and then the stats spells special, and then you took the special test
Yeah.
and you are special, dude, there's something about that is like, it puts a smile on my face. There's something exciting about somebody who like figured out all this shit, and it's not a ton. You see it in D&D games a lot of times. Pen and paper people
Yeah.
will come up with
But
stats.
context
and
does a lot to sort of
it
immerse
fucking
you in the
sells
world.
you in it, dude. And
Yeah.
it sells,
Yeah.
and then you see the little Pip-Boy guy, which then sells the tongue-in-cheek way in which radiation's hit. I mean, I know that people don't love the new Fallouts. A lot of people I know don't like them as much as, let's say, 1 and 2, or people only like New Vegas, or only like 3, or what have you. But I would say Silver's answer is better than mine. I do think Fallout's probably the best example. Like
Pretty
that
good.
that is one of the best examples of like form and function and fiction fucking overlaying on the top of it. And the exact opposite example, straight up, Skyrim. Or I just think Skyrim does not do a good job at that. In fact, everything feels gamified. And their stories don't have any real connection to anything else. I mean, there's a lore. It's over here though. It's not in
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
not in the
And
inventory.
it's not tied to you being good with magic.
Yeah. The
or
only thing I will give
it's
Skyrim
open.
a kudo though, when you look up to the stars to identify your stats, your skills. I did find that magical in Skyrim because the entire world's about stars. When you play Skyrim nighttime, it's still bright.
Yeah.
It's got that glow in the dark fucking black
And you have the
velvet
star
1980s.
signs, yeah.
Yes. And when you push up, this sounds so dumb, but I remember pushing up on the digital pad and it looked up and you hear that and you go into this celestial stuff. And I was like, that shit was awesome.
Yep.
That part was great. What else do we got?
This one here from Norway. A couple of weeks ago, you, Karak, were talking about a true sequel to Mario 64 and how that would be great. I feel like they're more likely to make a Super Mario Maker 3D and use Mario 64 as basis for it. Seeing how the blocks in that game would make it easier to make the leap to 3D. Or do you think a 3D Mario Maker would be too hard to actually use?
Okay, that's weird. So I don't know if he saw me in another chat because I share our Discord chat with with the Iron Lords, and we just talked about this 2-3 days ago. This exact comment. So I was saying, I don't think Mario 64 has been equaled by Nintendo. I think that Mario 64, Mario Odyssey tried, and it did very well, but it didn't. Mario 64 is still spoken of in like these lofty chambers of people saying, like, gameplay wise, developers going, man, everything sort of worked out right. Even if you don't like the game, it's like you can see that the way it all worked out. And I had brought up the same exact thing, that the Mario Maker, I think that a Mario Maker would be phenomenal, but it is not the same thing as being delivered to you. It's almost like what we talked about earlier, where you ask the developer asks you, and you're going back and forth. Great.
Yes.
That's not the same thing as you telling me that when I wake up, Switch is going to announce that a primary launch title on Switch 2 is either Super Mario 64 2, you know, whatever, you do something weird with the number,
128
or
Mario.
Super Mario 3D Maker. I am sorry, they're not even on the same. They're not even on the same planet. If you aimed for 64 times 2, that to me is not only a lofty goal, it's probably unattainable, but it would be fucking unbelievable. And at the same
Yeah,
time,
it's a different
3D
level.
Maker would be great too. I'd love 3D
Yeah.
Maker. I don't know if you guys saw some of the shit, but it was ridiculous. I had like Takedown crying almost in one of the chats because he was trying some of the levels that people had made. They were ridiculous, guys. Motherfucker. Dude, did you try them, Silver? They're fucking insane. Like, I don't even know if they were winnable. I don't know if people were trying to fuck with me, but I was like, dude.
There are definitely some that were purposely made unwinnable.
Unwinnable.
They have a system where you have to beat the level you create.
Oh, that is
I believe.
true. I think. Well, I don't know if that was that right away.
Did they?
I don't
think
know.
they
I
did.
believe there
think
is
they
that
did.
system.
I think there is
I
a
don't
system
play
like
it,
that.
so people call me out if I got that wrong, but I did hear that.
But Packy agrees with me.
Yeah.
Packley, Mario 64 times 2, whatever you want to call it. I just think that would be. It would be
Well,
like
that's
Nintendo
it's
listening.
a console seller.
Well, it's a
That
console seller,
is-
but it also would indicate that Nintendo. I know that they don't want to do the same stuff.
It would also be, I think, a lot harder for people to. I think that's one of the things that really made the Mario Maker so accessible was that it was 2D.
About the 3D 2D.
People.
I got to agree
Yeah.
with Silver. I think 2D design. Have you ever, if you mess with an editor, you did Unreal, I've done Unreal, we've done Arma. You start setting shit out in 3D, your brain,
yeah, dude.
After a little while,
Well,
you're
there's
like,
a
what the fuck?
reason. There's a reason why they separate courses between like
Absolutely.
2D, 3D.
Yeah.
And the ones, if you go into a 2D course, it's much more in depth. You're able to create something much more, elaborate compared to the 3D. In the 3D, you're just doing, like pre-generated and using a bunch of really simple stuff.
I think the 3D would be great. I played Spark. I'm sure this is something you guys probably didn't know or didn't play, but Microsoft had a 3D level maker called Spark. You could jump in there.
Yeah.
Sort of. I really enjoyed that.
What was the Sony one?
Little Big Planet and Dream.
Little Big.
Yeah, both of
Yeah,
those.
yeah.
And Little Big Planet, you see shit from them. Prima, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely fucking mind-blowing. I love that. But that does not replace the heritage that you have. It's the same way with Halo Forge. Halo Forge can be as good as the best of anything ever in the universe, and it will not be the same as a Halo sequel that is equivalent to 1 or 2. They are not. There is a difference there. Even if somebody made amazing levels in Forge, it's not the same as the developer being that cohesive idea of here's our thing and here's we know our own heritage. And Nintendo has a tendency to regurgitate heritage in some places that stun me, like Pokemon. I get that it sells well, but they deliver dog shit consistently. And I know it's not them, it's the Pokemon company or whatever, but it's them in the fact that it's widely them. And yet we haven't seen, other than Odyssey, an attempt to be like, oh, right, we've got this really popular game we made one day. Why don't we return there? No, instead we have Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, which arguably are quite similar. I would say if you look at those, you're like, okay, if Nintendo's trying to say we only want to differentiate and we don't want to return, then I would argue and say, if you look at Zelda Breath of the Wild and you look at Tears of the Kingdom, there's a great deal about those games that overlap. If you can overlap there, you can make a Mario 64 times 2, whatever the fuck you want to call it. That's what I believe. Doom 2016 had a good map. What was that? Snap map for 2016 Doom. They had one. Yeah, that was a good map maker. Little generic, but still pretty good. What else we got?
This one from A1 Nagel. If you could play only one console for the rest of your life and you could get every game made for it, what console would you go with?
Oh, damn. So you had one console with every game that was on that console?
Yeah,
like,
you could
so we'll say as today
you
backwards?
get every game made for it.
And it can't be PC. Okay, so...
Yeah, I guess PC... If
now,
we
PC
could choose
doesn't make any
PC,
sense.
that's probably the easy answer.
A console with every game... 360.
Really?
Absolutely. When I look at the breadth of games, it would be like PlayStation would be close, but I'm not a big fan of those exclusives back then.
But
I'm not a huge Final
no more
Fantasy
games
fan.
are coming out for it though.
Correct. That's what
So
we're
you
saying.
wouldn't be able
Starting
to-
today, going backwards, pick a console. That's how I
Okay,
took
I
his
was
question.
thinking more like for the rest of your life, new games are gonna come in, and you're gonna want
No,
to.
he said you have every game. So that to me indicates the end. So as of today,
the history.
backwards, the history. Yeah. Because otherwise
Right.
it wouldn't make sense. Otherwise, I'd just say the Xbox
Otherwise,
X
the
or
catalog would be kind of irrelevant.
yeah, the catalog
Almost.
wouldn't matter because it could be anything in the future. I could just say, well,
Okay.
I'll wait for GTA 6.
Mhm.
So the only way it would make sense is going backwards. And I would say for sure the 360, just because they had such a wide breadth. They also had Mass Effect. Yeah, 360 for me. What about you guys? Any odd answers like SNES or I don't think that's
Yeah.
odd. I shouldn't have said it that way, but
Either is the Game Boy Advance SP
oh damn,
or the 3DS.
3DS.
My 3DS XL.
That is 3DS had a lot of fucking games too. Was the XL?
Yeah, and backwards compatibility with the DS.
That's what I was going to ask. So backwards and bigger, right? The XL,
Yeah.
because size,
Yeah.
because Nintendo can't fucking name for shit. So
Yeah.
so larger, backwards compatible, all the way to Game Boy. Is that or was it just to DS? and then-
No, the DS was backwards. Actually, might
think it might
actually
have been.
pick the DS over the 3DS actually,
Oh,
because
really?
the DS was backwards compatible with Game Boy Advance games. Yeah,
There you go. Yeah, yeah. So you're
So,
thinking
yeah.
maybe the DS instead?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. What about you, Johnny? Any system?
Yeah, I don't know because I wouldn't go back and play those games as much as I loved them in the past. So
Well,
I
he's
guess
saying you're
just-
stuck with not being able to get anything else. So it's like,
not anything else. I guess stick me with a PS5 Pro, and I'll play the
damn,
PS5
you could play
Pro
some
games.
backwards compatible ones as well.
Yeah.
So,
I'll have a good time with it.
yeah, dude, it's interesting too because I hadn't thought about Game Boy, but Game Boy Advance in
Yeah.
particular was pretty not close to what, but it was a pretty powerful handheld when you consider what it was able to do. There was a lot of cool games on it.
And the library
Massive,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Especially when you had backwards. See, the 360 had some backwards compatible, so I'd get some Xbox on there, which is sort of what I was aiming for because there's a couple Xbox games that I love. PS2 is probably going to be most people's answers. I'm just assuming. I'm looking here.
Yeah,
Let's-
it was a very good one.
we
Very
got.
good era.
Oh yeah, it was a good era. We got Xbox 360 for sure. Dreamcast. See, I almost chose Dreamcast, man, because Dreamcast had some titles that were under the radar, but then I looked at like the catalog of full titles and I was like, maybe not. I didn't even think handheld. I'm biased. Oh, he's the one who wrote the question too. Whoops. There we go. GBA. Plague Souls agrees. Like some of the older handhelds. That's crazy. Get a launch PS3 to play PS1 and PS2. Powder Keg says. That's a smart idea. Yeah, if you got a launch PS3, that was back in the hardware compatibility days. So you would have been able to do all that. That's crazy. What else do we got?
Okay, so let's go with this one. AJ, as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a hot topic, if you could take the combat from one RPG and the story from another to create the perfect game, which would you combine?
Story from one and like combat from the other?
Yes.
Combat from Dragon's Dogma.
Oh, yeah, that'd be fucking. But what story?
Witcher?
Like,
Yeah, that's the larger question. The Witcher might be good actually. Like, could be fun to like hunt.
I think so.
Like monsters of Witcher with like
being
Dragon's
able to
Dogma
leap on them
style.
in that same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So weirdly enough, I was going to go even farther back and say Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, or Might and Magic Dark Messiah, which as the combat, and then Witcher, weirdly enough, was because I was thinking the same way you were of like how it's set up, monsters here. It's just that I know you guys, I know everybody's in love with the story of Witcher. I didn't necessarily love the story as much as everybody else, but I still think that's probably. Oh my God, nope. I now know. Call of Duty and Mass Effect. For sure. For sure. I like Call of Duty shooting. I know
Damn.
it's not perfect, but I like Call of Duty shooting. I like Mass Effect's world. If you could get shooting that was so ace that it felt like the better shooters and then leap me into Mass Effect's story and
Yeah.
stuff.
Still
would be
having
mine.
the skills and everything, like the pause.
Well, see, that's the thing that's why I asked about combat, because I was like,
yeah.
how much, if you inject
I
too
also
much,
understood it as the combat also had to come from an RPG.
the combat had to come from an RPG.
Yeah. So combat from
so
one
it had
RPG
to be an RPG like Dragon Age
story
Inquisition,
from
which
a different
okay,
RPG.
so it had to be RPGs.
Yeah.
Then
I see.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I understood the
okay,
question.
no,
anyway.
no, that's fair. RPG combat.
But I could be wrong.
Man, despite its issues, Dragon's Dogma's up there. Even though some people probably say Dragon's Dogma isn't an RPG, but I'm gonna say it is.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure it is.
What about you, Johnny? Because I'm drawing a blank, because I would almost say what
It's a
Silver
tough
just
one.
said. I guess you could say Cyberpunk shooting with a. Okay. Well, okay. Cyberpunk and Mass Effect. Is that answer correct?
Yeah.
Does that fit in the in the question that we're talking
I
about?
would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So better shooting, like better first person.
Right. So
From
Cyberpunk
Cyberpunk.
post 2.0, they actually finally released their good game
Yeah.
version. So Cyberpunk 2.0 and Mass Effect. Yeah. Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
mine. I mean, I would cheat and go with Silver's, but I tried to come up with it because Silver's
Yeah.
brought that's a
I
good
was
answer.
thinking if we could take like the combat from Neo, but put it in a really cool story,
Neo,
like maybe Ghost of Tsushima or something, a bit more story heavy. Dude.
Neo and KOTOR. Fuck with
Whoa.
lightsabers and shit, but good instead of like
Dude.
Survivor, where it actually made
Yes.
sense. That
Mhm.
could be. Dude,
Damn.
that's awesome. I'm actually glad you guys corrected me on the RPG thing, because that tightens you down to
That
like,
makes a bit more concrete.
shit, man. Dude, I have a lot of ideas then. I hadn't even thought. So is Neo an. Yeah, Neo's an RPG. See,
Yeah, Neo's an
this is the
RPG.
problem. Neo's an RPG.
Yeah,
I'm
just
already
because it's so like
strictly
stat heavy
speaking,
and
It
everything.
is. It is.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
It is. It is. Like that kind of bullshit is what I shouldn't even. I'm the one who's usually being
Yeah.
like, shut up about the RPG question. But dude, Neo's combat. I was
Yeah.
talking to Fighting Cowboy just yesterday, and we were going through games where there's reasons, but we were discussing like the games and the combats that we like, and he was like, "So what's your favorite?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't know what it is about Neo 2.
It's
but
still so clean.
it's so
man.
fucking
It's so
sexy.
good.
I almost get
Yeah.
like a little shiver when I think about how
Yeah.
much fun I had and how it was the first Dark Souls / style game that I was like, I sort of think I understand why people liked Dark Souls, which I never got into. There was something
Yeah.
about Neo where I'm like, holy fuck.
Yeah, because it's fast, you feel powerful, but also you're humbled all the time.
I mean, you could be humbled, but it's like, I feel like a good player, certainly beyond my capabilities, but a good player who is just really fast and played a certain way could probably do quite well right away. I wasn't able to.
Probably.
I did a
No,
lot
me
of
neither.
dying.
I had to learn a lot of stuff.
I
Yeah.
did a lot of dying. Guess I need to play Neo 2. You fucking need to play Neo 2, dude. You have
Yes.
Bitlerus just said
Yeah.
that's why I went back to Neo last month. So good. I can't even describe. I liked Sekiro a lot, but Neo 2's combat is like fucking. It's miles beyond
dude.
that game, and I love
Yeah.
the game.
I mean, Sekiro's very limited in the options it offers for its
Yeah,
combat.
very
whereas
limited.
and Neo's like,
Neo is very extensive in that regard.
and it did this
Enormous build diversity.
in the low, medium, high of Neo, like especially in 2, where you can like buy the skills that are high for the upper stance, lower
Oh,
stance.
the stances? Oh, they were genius,
and
man.
it is genius because you could get a fucking big weapon and say, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go with the fast attacks with the big weapon because I want the range of the big weapon, or I want this. You could do like, well, Silver just said it, build diversity. You could get 7 people with the same weapon in that game that would dramatically look different if they just chose the different skill stances and then one person did key pulse and the others didn't or something. You could get a pretty big diversity there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, that's a good question.
Huge.
Who asked that question?
That was AJ.
Hang on, AJ. You're getting a special pat on the back right now, mentally from me. You can feel it. It's not somebody, doing something unacceptable in a
Okay,
subway.
it's getting a little creepy
It's
now.
me.
Why are you
It's me
closing your
rubbing your
eyes?
back. It's me rubbing your back
Oh,
gently. There's a
it's a
knot in your shoulder.
disaster.
Okay, continue. What else we got?
All right, let's do a speed round here. We have
All right.
Master Stoner 99. Do you have a game that you did not like, but it had one aspect that just compelled you to finish it regardless?
That's another good
question.
So one game we didn't like or love, but one particular thing drug us through it.
Yeah. I've had a bunch of those, but
So if
none that come to mind like off the top of my head.
One particular aspect.
Yeah, I think I didn't, at the time at least, I didn't like Sekiro very much.
Mm-hmm.
In my second playthrough, I learned to appreciate it for what it was, and then
so
I really
what
enjoyed
drug
it.
you through it? The combat?
Partly the challenge too, because I wanted to overcome it and learn, become a better player and stuff, be able to overcome the challenge. Yeah. Also, I was streaming the game, so it was partly like, hey, mama ain't raised no bitch, right? We're streaming this, we're beating this, and yeah, I just pulled through. But
so I will say this. I think generally most Call of Duties, because I like their shooting, but I'm almost never enamored with their stories, and certainly not the ones that are the atypical ones everybody else seems to like.
Sense.
But their shooting, it to me is, and it's certainly not amazing. It's in fact a lot of times it's sort of just your typical. It's almost like a Target kind of thing, and you turn it on too hard, and they just grenade spam you. But I would say there's been many many a Call of Duty that I've played all the way through, and it's been the combat and the story I've listened to, but the shooting in it is just fun. Yeah, just fun. I mean, there's a lot of answers though, as Silver said. There's like a ton of games where I realize at the end I'm like, oh, you know what? I didn't love like Life is Strange. I'm not a huge fan of just walking around unless it's great story. That story is phenomenal. So that pulled me through the ABA kind of gameplay to where I loved it. What else we got? Oh, do you have one, Johnny? So, you said Sekiro, and then Silver said he had many, but didn't have an exact one. Okay, go ahead.
This one from Sky Days. I recently realized that in tough times, I turn to difficult games like Bloodborne and Sekiro. The challenge and difficulty takes the focus away from what you're going through, and enables escapism on a higher level. Do you guys have any games that you turn to in any type of situation like that?
I just want to say that dude is so opposite me.
Dude, I'm the opposite.
Oh my God, I can't do that. That's crazy.
Kudos to you that you can focus in a really hard game.
Yeah. I am so if there was something really bad happening, I would actually watch a show. I wouldn't even be able to
watch a show.
Yeah,
because even like the idea of staying focused on a story in a game, or like engaging with systems in a game and stuff, I just might not be in a mental place if I'm going through something.
So what's a game that generally you go to, like maybe to unwind or to ignore whatever's going on?
I think something like SnowRunner is a good one, where I can turn that on. I don't need a lot of bandwidth. I can even talk to you guys or listen to a podcast, and that to me does give me energy.
That's a good point. What about you, Silver? Is it like Tetris or something? I mean, I know that's sort of a generic puzzler, but I mean, is that one that you go to? Like, can you play it if you're having bad times?
Oh, for sure.
You can.
I mean, I can play most games with even through bad times. I mean, I think like him, it offers a sort of escapism. I don't seek out challenging games necessarily. But I also don't necessarily avoid them.
Okay.
But I will seek out like escapism, whether it's video games or books or whatever. It can take a lot of different forms.
Do you have one that calls you occasionally, like when you are having a bad day or whatever, that your brain goes?
I mean, if it's a really bad day and I just need to chill, I mean, Stardew Valley's always there. Still, that's just a perfect feel good game. That and like you said, Tetris still after all these years.
Mine is
And chess on occasion.
oh, dude, chess is awesome. Except, yeah, chess I could play even on a bad like day. Yeah, chess is a good one. I would say Poker Smash for the 360, which is a lot like a Tetris style game, but the other one is Sims. So people can call me not a hardcore gamer.
Oh
But
yeah, Sims as well.
the idea of Sims, hey, I can kill people, I can lock them up,
No, I
I
haven't
can
played that in
fucking
ages.
delete their
honestly.
ladders. I just love it. It's just one of those things. Robert says The Sims would be his too. Okay, there we go. Telltale Games, Diablo 2. Alp says bad days usually make me want to work out. Yeah, those are all I could see wanting to work out or not wanting to work out. What else do we got, Johnny?
Last question of the day. Beastie by Nature says, with Marvel Rivals being the cheddar biscuits of multiplayers right now, what is one thing you dislike your teammates doing in a game that can turn your previous enjoyment sour? In particular, for me, it's the staggering and everyone is getting wiped one by one after previously getting team wiped.
So in a multiplayer game, what's one thing that like ruins the enjoyment? We'll say other than like, them dropping into chat or something. We'll go with gameplay style. Okay.
Yeah. Because I mute all my teammates, dude. I just mute everybody.
Yeah.
I assume everybody's super nice.
That's exactly right. I'm assuming they're like, hey, pip, gentlemen. Would you like some Earl Grey? Something that I hate.
Oh.
Do you guys have one?
Well, the one thing that I hate is when people go AFK. So if I'm playing a game of League and an ally is just AFK, like I don't know, maybe they went to take a phone call or whatever, right. It ruins the game, right? Completely. Like it completely ruins the game. And there are some systems to punish people, but at the end of the day, the game is ruined. And that does piss me off because it's a lot of time wasted too. So I would say that's probably the most egregious.
You, Silver?
There's a bunch. Big one that's probably largely on me as well is I'm a player who tends to spearhead a lot. I take initiative pretty quickly, and a lot of the times I take initiative a lot quicker than my teammates do. So I assume they're behind me, but really they've been left far behind, and I haven't noticed. They haven't followed me, and I just assume that they'll know to follow me. And so I end up behind enemy lines all by myself.
Yeah, I can attest to that because I played Vermintide with you, and that one time we were playing Vermintide 1, and I'm like, okay, let's go, and you were off in the corner. And this also happened with the Dwarven Hammer game. Fucking the mine game.
That was
Jesus.
Yeah, that was just the mining resources. Yeah.
But one time I was talking to you, and you wanted to get the tome, I think, in Vermintide. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Yeah. And you're like, well, there's a tome way over here. I'm like, Silver, what the fuck? That was awesome. But it didn't make me mad. I would say the one thing that makes me mad is pretty much what Johnny said for sure. Is I didn't get mad. I don't get too frustrated because I don't know somebody's thought process, and I'm pretty laid back in multiplayer. I'm more like, let's have a good time and like that kind of stuff. The only thing I have noticed is I do have some friends. Moodski's one of them, and Jay is one of them, where we'll be playing a game, and I will see that they're staring off in space in the middle of a fucking fight, and they've either gone away from keyboard, or Jay, in the middle of one of the hardest fights we had, was talking about the mist and fog and how good the game looked while I was bleeding to death on the ground in a boss fight. And it's become this joke with Jay where it's like, he's like, dude, but the grass or the fog or the sky. And I'm like, dude, I'm over here bleeding to death. We can look at shit when nobody's here attacking us. And then Moodski is also like Silver. He'll fucking, you can't even get in a line with Moodski. I swear to God, his sprint button is broken and it goes twice as fast. Cause I will jump into a game of fucking a division with that dude and he's already over a thing and be like, oh, I'm down. And he'll giggle. That's how I know Moodski's down. You're, and I'll be like, fuck. And he's down. So you go over, you bring him back up, and then you come over here and you look back over and Moodski is all the way somehow. I don't know how he programmed the game. He's all the fucking way on the other side, shooting back this way.
Already downed.
And then he's downed, and he's not downed a lot. I'm just saying he's by himself because you can't even get to support him. And we were playing with Turum and all these guys, and I love Turum. Turum's one of the nicest guys in the world. Very, very calm. We get in this fucking battle. About the 5th time, Amutski's down. Amutski says something like, I'm down. And Turum just quietly goes, if you're closer to the people who can heal you, you probably live a little longer. Or something like that. It was just the most calm, it wasn't condescending, but it was from Turum, because he's not a condescending guy. He's one of the nicest, and he's the healer of the group. But he was like, yeah, if you stay closer to the healers, you'd live longer. And I was like, dude.
You were in Narnia.
He was, dude, he took the wardrobe down a fucking slide, man. I mean, he was gone. And you're just like, dude, what are you doing? It was so fun. To me, it doesn't make me mad, but it does make me, after the 3rd or 4th time, go, dude.
Yeah, I don't tend to get mad.
It was so fun, though.
Also because I mostly play with friends. I rarely play with randoms.
Me too.
I think probably the closest that got me mad was where instances in Helldivers playing with randoms who didn't know the game very well and like insisted on like aggroing every single patrol encounter.
Gotcha. See, that's the thing.
And like bringing down the entire map on us. And in a constant losing battle where I eventually just decided, no, I'm just going to leave him there and let him deal with it. And I'll go around and do all the objectives while they stay here and fight off the hordes.
I think you're sort of like me, where I'm pretty understanding that somebody may not know the game. And so a lot of times when I'm with my friends, I'll be the one telling them.
But then you try and explain it in the chat, and then they don't see the chat or they don't listen.
Yeah.
When you try and say it over the voice chat, and then when the patience starts to lower for it.
Yeah. Those are the moments where, like I said, I don't get mad. I'm just like we would all do better if we all sort of had the same general plan. That happened in Back for Blood. We were in there with Idiot Doom Spiral, has been on the podcast. Great time. But we walked into an area, and I swear to shit, guys, 3D audio is the best indicator of everybody running off on their own to get killed that I've ever seen. Because I walk through the center, and all I hear is as everybody
fading out.
And I'm like, dude, what do you do? What are you guys? And it fucking bad guy comes in, they're like, blah, blah, blah. And you're fighting a bad guy, and you're like, bad guy. You know, and you have these names for him. You'll be like Spitter, Fatty, whatever. And the guy's like, ooh, and you can hear somebody picking up loot. You're fighting for your life, and you hear, ooh, there's something over here. And you're like, dude, I've been screaming into the mic. Would you fucking come help me? And they're over there getting a purple. They're like, hey,
there's a giant tall boy right here.
So great. I find that more fun, like I find that engaging, like super funny. I mean, I shot Silver in the ass the first time we ever played Arma because I thought he is not lying when he says he goes forward. He went so far forward that I thought he was the bad guy. And I was with Reg and, was it Takedown? No,
it was it was just you, me, and Reg.
And I turned around, and there's a guy laying there, and I was like, fucking bad guy, 5 Club, boom! And he's like, dude, that was me. And I shot him right in the anus. And I was like, oh, shit, man. And I'm the guy who got him to, Silver play, but I was the guy who, like, put us all together. I was like, hey, man, I play this game a lot. Obviously
That'll be
not
an
long
awkward
enough.
Conversation with his wife when you tell him about the anus.
Oh, yeah, I keistered him. I mean, it was like, and Arma, you only get shot once or twice, you're dead anyway. It was like,
I did get a Purple Heart for it, so.
There you go. Admittedly, it was all on purpose to make sure that you got the award, right? Is that all we got for questions then? I didn't realize we had gone for 3 hours, 30 minutes. Thank you, everybody, for showing up to the podcast. Thanks to Silver and Johnny. I know it's late for them, so I'm going to let them get out of here. Anybody who gets a chance, stop by the Discord. You can continue this conversation with us or start new ones. Hopefully they're intelligent conversations, because I can't guarantee the ones we're having are. Maybe you can come in and you can level up this conversation. Last but not least, Johnny, streaming this weekend or new footage coming?
Yeah, I've been doing some streams for fun on my Twitch. So Johnny Plays Live on Twitch. Playing some games for fun. Sometimes League, sometimes other games like the first Berserker demo, also the Monster Hunter Wilds beta, this type of stuff. Expect to see it there. And expect to see an impressions video about Monster Hunter Wilds too on my channel.
All right.
Outside of the League content too.
And from me, you will see reviews coming in the next week. Pretty hot and heavy. There are a lot of reviews all the way up until middle or late February. It is a busy time. If you get a chance, I would love for you to thumbs this video up when it's done, as well as go and visit those videos when they go live. Make sure to subscribe or unsubscribe and subscribe and hit all if you're not getting the shit. Steel, the Discord is in the Patreon. You have to go to the Patreon and be a patron, because trust me, when it was free, it was filled with porn, which is good. Technically, but not good for a video.
Or YouTube members, right? They also get
YouTube members can, they get joined up. Peace out, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Take care.
That was awesome.